Chapter 354. He didn't care. My birthday is on the 19th, and it's a busy day. It's also the first time I've celebrated my birthday abroad. I've been on the road ever since. I finished writing this chapter on the plane. It was already very late when I got back to Beijing. By the time I finished dinner, it was already past midnight. I'll start updating tomorrow, and I'll make up for everything I owe. Qin Sheng did not want to know the identity and background of this so-called father, because he would know it sooner or later. He just wanted to know the truth of everything that had happened during this period of time. This was because he still suspected that his life during this period of time was in the Truman Show's world. Everything had been arranged by someone else. Many things made him feel that they were too coincidental and lucky, especially after what happened on Mount Jiuhua. Everything could be overturned and a new conclusion could be made. Qin Chang'an sat in front of Qin Sheng slowly and waited for Qin Sheng's questioning calmly. He would tell Qin Sheng all the truth without hiding anything. He also did not care whether Qin Sheng could take it or not. A man must experience enough ups and downs and great storms to be thoroughly tempered. Only then would he be able to remain calm and unflustered in the face of anything. Therefore, Qin Chang'an did not mind that Qin Sheng would hate him after knowing the truth, or that Qin Sheng would not acknowledge him as his father from the beginning to the end. Because he was Qin Sheng's father, this was an undeniable fact. It did not matter whether he admitted it or not. However, his more important identity was the helmsman of the Qin family, and Qin Sheng was the future successor of the Qin family. Therefore, all of this was worth it. Even though Qin Sheng was mentally stronger than his peers, he still lacked confidence when facing Qin Chang'an. After thinking for a long time, he opened his mouth and asked, "When did you know about my existence?" This question was very straightforward. Qin Sheng just wanted to know when he had found him, why he had been reluctant to acknowledge him, and what he had done during this period. As a result, Qin Chang'an laughed and said, "I knew I had a son since you were born, so I always knew about your existence. However, my father, who is your grandfather, took you away from here. I've been looking for you for more than 20 years, but I haven't been able to find you. Your grandfather isn't an ordinary person. If he wants someone to disappear, not many people can find them. Besides, he's taking you with him to hide from his enemies. However, I know you don't want to know these things. You want to know when I found you. Let me think." After Qin Chang'an finished his opening remarks, he deliberately kept Qin Sheng guessing. Qin Sheng looked very serious as he waited for Qin Chang'an's answer. "It should be a month before you returned to Xi'an. You did something in Shenzhen, and you crossed paths with my good friend. He and I have known each other since we were young. Later on, his career was hindered and he went to do business. Now, he can be considered a big shot in Shenzhen. He felt that you were very similar to me when I was young, and he also knew that I had a son who had been separated from me for more than 20 years. Coincidentally, your surname was also Qin, so he told me. What happened next was very simple. With my power, it was easy for me to find out your whereabouts. Originally, I was not disappointed at all, but the result shocked me. Qin Chang'an told Qin Sheng what he knew truthfully, without any exaggeration. When Qin Sheng heard this result, although he had already guessed it, he still found it unbelievable. He had thought that Qin Chang'an might have known about his existence after he had arrived in Shanghai, but he did not expect that it would be so long in advance. After Qin Sheng came to himself, he questioned, "Then why didn't you recognize me?" Qin Chang'an looked at the snow outside the window and said with a chuckle, "You have your world, and I also have mine. I think you also know that my world is different from most people's. If I recognized you rashly, not to mention whether you could accept it or not, let you enter my world suddenly, I don't know whether you could bear the pressure, because I have been separated from you for more than 20 years. Although I am your father, I don't know you at all. I dare not take this risk. I have to know what kind of person you are." Qin Chang'an's words moved Qin Sheng more or less, because what Qin Chang'an said was indeed reasonable. Qin Sheng already knew that Qin Chang'an was not simple. If he had really recognized him at that time, he might not have been able to bear the suffocating pressure. The two worlds had no intersection at all, and it was even more different. Ordinary people might need the efforts of 3 generations to enter this world from that world, but he might need the efforts of a lifetime. After one question, Qin Sheng continued, "Did you see me before you went a shaman?" Qin Chang'an asked the servant to come in and pour a glass of water for him. Because it was time to take medicine, Gong Sun had been waiting outside early. He asked the servant to bring in the medicine that Qin Chang'an usually took. After all, he was almost 60 years old, and his body was not as good as before. He had to take good care of himself. Qin Sheng had been waiting for Qin Chang'an patiently for a few minutes in total. After taking the medicine and waiting for the servant to leave, Qin Chang'an answered Qin Sheng's question. Yes. The first time was in Xi'an, which is the afternoon when you return to Xi'an, in front of the old master's grave at the foot of Zhongnan Mountains. The second time was in Shanghai, at the entrance of the community where you live. I saw you in a hurry. Qin Chang'an answered truthfully. After hearing this, Qin Sheng felt more pressure because Qin Chang'an's answer was close to his guess, which made him a little panicked. So Qin Sheng said without warning, "Are Han Guoping and Jiang Xianbang your people?" Qin Chang'an shook his head and did not know whether to laugh or cry. "No, I have no intersection with them at all. You don't have to doubt it." "Then Zhuang Zhou must be your people. What's your relationship with him?" Hearing this, Qin Sheng felt much more at ease. He did not doubt Qin Chang'an's words. After all, Han Guoping had known him during the 2 years of traveling, and Jiang Xianbang had known him since he was very young. If they were both Qin Chang'an's people, then Qin Chang'an would not have found him so late. However, they were not. But Zhuangzhou was definitely Qin Chang'an's people. After all, Zhuangzhou was outside now. Qin Chang'an knew that Qin Sheng would definitely ask this question, so he was not surprised at all. He said in a low voice, "How do you explain my relationship with Zhuangzhou? We are friends and brothers, but this good relationship was established by your grandfather. Zhuangzhou has always felt that he owes our Qin family a big favor, so he has done many things for me these years. I also feel guilty to him." Qin Sheng did not expect the relationship between Uncle Zhuang and the Qin family to be so complicated, but he did not want to think about these things now. Instead, he continued to ask, "I want to know who is still considered your people." This question was more or less childish. It seemed that the recent events had messed up Qin Sheng's basic judgment, making him start to deny many things that had happened in the past. His heart was still too weak and not strong enough. Not in Shanghai, not in Xiamen. If there is someone in Hangzhou, Chowda is counted. After all, he was introduced to you by Zhuangzhou. If there is someone else, then old Lu is counted. He is close to the Chun family and knows something about the old master. The Chun family sent someone to ask me about it. I was afraid that someone would leak the news, so I went to Hangzhou in person and sealed his mouth. Otherwise, do you think that his paintings could be hyped up so much in the art market recently?" Qin Chang'an said with a chuckle. His tone seemed very casual, especially when he talked about Master Lu, as if these things were not worth mentioning at all. As Qin Chang'an spoke, Qin Sheng's face became more and more gloomy, because the truth was just as he thought. He had been living in a world arranged by Qin Chang'an, just like the hero in the world of the Truman Show. However, he still restrained his impulse and did not lose his temper because he still had questions to ask. So he continued to say, "You know me so well. Do you know everything about me? Have you always sent someone to spy on me in secret? Otherwise, how could Uncle Zhuang save me at the critical moment in Mount Jiahua?" Qin Chang'an knew that the critical moment for the first formal chat between the father and the son had come. However, he did not want to hide anything from Qin Sheng. Although it would make Qin Sheng resent him and make him think that he could do whatever he wanted with money and power, he really wanted to tell Qin Sheng that in many cases, one could really do whatever he wanted with money and power, especially for most ordinary people. This was the cruel reality. If you think that it is surveillance, then you can think that it is surveillance. But I think it should be considered as protection for you. Otherwise, I would not have saved you in Mount Jiahua and Huangmei Town. If you were an ordinary person, you would have died many times over, Qin Chang'an said sharply. Maybe he was too direct and did not care about Qin Sheng's feelings. However, what he said was the truth. Which ordinary person would be so reckless? It was just that Qin Sheng's point of view was different from Qin Chang'an's. Qin Chang'an answered in such a tone, but Qin Sheng did not care about it at all, because he heard a key word, Huang Mei Town. It did not occur to him that it was Qin Chang'an who helped him get through the crisis in Huang Mei Town. He could not accept it, because it made him feel that he was a useless person who needed others' help to get through the crisis. Based on his character, he could not accept such a result at all, because it was a naked insult to him. Qin Sheng gnashed his teeth and asked, "When did you start your so-called protection? What do you think?" Qin Chang'an asked back. Qin Sheng thought for a while and said, "Shaman, Shanghai, or Xin." Qin Chang'an shook his head and smiled bitterly. He was a little disdainful because he thought that Qin Sheng should have guessed it. Consequently, he replied, "No, from the moment I found you, you have never been out of my range of ability." This answer completely ignited the anger that Qin Sheng had suppressed for a long time. With a bang, he bounced up from the ground and said to Qin Chang'an why. Qin Sheng's anger could not threaten Qin Chang'an, who was used to seeing storms. Qin Chang'an was still calm and collected. Except for the slight nervousness at the beginning, he was as calm as water at this moment. He explained with a smile, "I will not tell you why, because it is meaningless for you now. But one day, you will understand my good intention today." After saying the last sentence, Qin Chang'an stood up and left without hesitation. He did not pay attention to Qin Sheng, who was dizzy with anger. He thought that he had said what he should say and was not in the mood to deal with Qin Sheng's meaningless questions. Chapter 355. Gone? From Qin Chang'an's point of view, what he did was certainly correct. Firstly, he wanted to protect Qin Sheng. Secondly, he wanted to train Qin Sheng. Thirdly, he wanted to figure out what kind of person Qin Sheng was. Although Qin Sheng was his son, and there had never been a good-for-nothing in the past few generations of men in the Qin family, he still wanted to use time to test Qin Sheng instead of blindly taking risks. After all, the Qin family was a big family with a big business. It was not easy for them to get to where they were today after sacrificing so many things. They had to be cautious. However, from Qin Sheng's point of view, he could not accept this, and it was also unfair to him, because this completely denied Qin Sheng's experience and achievements in the past few years. He had thought that he relied on his own ability to do many things. Sometimes, he also relied on luck and his grandfather's kindness. However, in the end, he found how ridiculous it was. He was just a puppet of others. Everything was arranged by others. Just like in online games, the plot was already set. For a man like Qin Sheng, who looked amiable but was actually arrogant, how could he accept such a result? How could he be willing to be a puppet of others and be manipulated by them? Secondly, was Qin Chang'an's so-called protection for him just to watch him being tortured by various people? After that, he had been wandering from place to place, suffering and being wronged. If he had not been lucky that time, and Zhuangzhou had not arrived at the last moment, he would have died on Mount Jiahua. As for what happened in Huang Mei Town, didn't you protect me? Why did you put me in a desperate situation? Was this your so-called protection? You protected me. Why did I have to exchange my brother's life for a chance of survival at the last moment? Why didn't you show up earlier? If you had shown up earlier, my brother would not have died. Do you know how it feels? You need to rely on others' lives to prolong your own life. You will be trapped in guilt and self-blame for the rest of your life. Sometimes, Qin Sheng really hoped that he was the one who died that day instead of Qingyang. In this way, he would not feel guilty. Therefore, during this period, he forced himself not to think about what had happened that night. He tried to avoid the facts subjectively, because that feeling was too torturous. Therefore, Qin Sheng was really disgusted by what Qin Chang'an had done. If Qin Chang'an had acknowledged him at the beginning, Qin Sheng might not have had any objection. After all, Qin Chang'an was his biological father. However, Qin Sheng could not accept what Qin Chang'an had done. He would rather pay a painful price for whatever he did in the end. Even if he died, it would be because he deserved it. However, he was not willing to become someone else's puppet and become the poor protagonist in the world of the Truman Show. Qin Chang'an left just like that, not caring about what Qin Sheng was thinking. Qin Sheng was left alone in the living room. At this moment, his mood was very complicated, and his mind was in a mess of all kinds of thoughts. Qin Sheng understood very well that Qin Chang'an was his father. He definitely had his reasons for doing these things. However, Qin Sheng was Qin Sheng. He also had his reasons. When the rules of the game collided with each other, there would definitely be conflicts. Qin Sheng was stunned by Qin Chang'an's words. He could only stand there in a daze, not knowing what to do. He did not know whether his idea was right or wrong. However, he could not accept Qin Chang'an's words at the moment. He felt extremely conflicted in his heart. Qin Ran had been waiting outside the main hall. She was afraid that the father and the son would quarrel. At first, there was no movement inside. Who knew that they would really quarrel in the end? Qin Ran could not help but feel nervous. No matter what, of course, she did not want the relationship between the father and the son, who had reunited after so many years, to be too tense. Otherwise, she would also feel uncomfortable. However, between Qin Chang'an and Qin Sheng, Qin Ran would stand on Qin Sheng's side without hesitation. That was because there were people who cared about Qin Chang'an, while no one cared about Qin Sheng. Consequently, when she saw Qin Chang'an walking out, Qin Ran directly blocked his way and said in an unfriendly tone, "Can't you treat him well?" Qin Chang'an was still not angry. It was okay for them to not understand. However, they were his children. How could a father blame his children? Consequently, Qin Chang'an said calmly, Ran, you will know my difficulties in the future." Qin Ran did not know why. When she heard this sentence, she suddenly felt that her father was already old. This kind of tone was quite sad. Consequently, Qin Ran did not know how to respond. Originally, she had been bold and confident, but in an instant, she did not have any temper at all. Qin Chang'an smiled gently and walked past Qin Ran. He had to go to the kitchen to see how the preparation for lunch was going. After a while, Qin Ran came to her senses. She smiled bitterly and said nothing. Although the family had reunited, they still needed a long time to get used to each other. When Qin Ran walked into the side hall, Qin Sheng was still in a daze. Qin Ran walked to the front of Qin Sheng, feeling somewhat distressed. She held Qin Sheng's hand and said, "Don't think so much." It was not until Qin Sheng felt the warmth in his hand that he shook his head somewhat helplessly. He did not know what to do. He had no choice but to say confusedly, "Sister, I want to find a place and stay quietly for a few days. I am a little tired." This was the first time that Qin Sheng had said that he was tired. In the past, no matter how much he had suffered or how much he had been wronged, he could always go on with a strong will. However, what had happened today had a great impact on him. He did not know what was right or wrong, nor did he know how to accept this. Qin Ran agreed without hesitation. "Okay, the Yinchi Lake is relatively quiet and the scenery is also good. I will take you there tomorrow. You can calm down there. I know you have had a hard time over these years." "I want to leave now," Qin Sheng said straightforwardly. He did not know how to face his father, Qin Chang'an. Right now, he really could not judge whether what Qin Chang'an had done was right or wrong. Qin Ran was stunned and did not know how to answer. After all, Qin Sheng had just come back today and met his biological father. It would not be good for him to leave directly like this. Consequently, after thinking for a while, Qin Ran said, "Qin Sheng, listen to me. No matter what kind of conflicts you have, he is your father after all. No matter what he has done, he does not have any bad intentions towards you. Moreover, so many years have passed, and you have just reconciled with each other today. If you do this, he will feel very uncomfortable. At least let us have a reunion dinner, okay?" Qin Ran's words were very pertinent. Qin Sheng had no choice but to nod and say, "Okay." The sister and brother stayed in the side hall for a while. Qin Sheng seemed to be in a bad state. Qin Ran did not know what to say and could only sigh. It was not until Gong Sun walked into the side hall and asked them to go to the dining room for a meal that Qin Ran took Qin Sheng there. In the side hall, Qin Chang'an had already sat on the main seat. Qin Ran took Qin Sheng and sat on his left side. Gong Sun sat on his right side. His position in the Qin family was very high. Qin Chang'an had never treated him as a servant. Instead, he regarded him as a member of the Qin family and his brother. As for Zhuang Zhou and Nan Gong, they had already left. The Qin family was reunited. It was not good for them to stay here. Originally, Nangong could have stayed. However, she was too tired recently and only wanted to have a good rest for a few days. After everyone sat down, the atmosphere at the dining table was a little bit awkward. The table was full of sumptuous dishes, but it did not seem to be so attractive. Qin Sheng's face was gloomy. He lowered his head and did not say a word. It was not good for Gongsun to break the deadlock. Qin Ran was thinking about what to say. After thinking for a while, she decided to take Qin Sheng away. After all, she had to tell the old man otherwise. It would be too disrespectful to the old man. The old man would definitely be sad and sad later. Consequently, Qin Ran took the initiative and said, "Dad, my brother has just come back. I think he has been too tired recently. I want to take him to Yinchi Lake to relax." Of course, Qin Chang'an knew this must be Qin Sheng's idea. He would not stop Qin Sheng. Even if he left Qin Sheng in the Sihiyuan, the father and the son would not say anything when they met. Consequently, he nodded and said, "Okay, your uncle Lee has a villa there. The environment is not bad. You can call him and tell him not to stay in a hotel." Upon hearing this, Qin Ran finally felt at ease. Although she knew that the old man would definitely agree, she was afraid that if he did not, it would be more difficult for them to reconcile. As for the uncle Lee she mentioned, he was a senior member of the group. Qin Chang'an picked up the chopsticks and said in a deep voice, "Let's eat." It was not until then that the others started to eat. Qin Chang'an ate at a moderate pace. This time, Qin Sheng did not act like he did in the past, holding the bowl of rice and picking the dishes slowly with his head lowered. Qin Ran did not eat much. Most of the time, she picked the dishes for the three men, especially Qin Sheng. Basically, Qin Sheng did not need to do anything. While he was picking the dishes, he said that these were his sister's favorite dishes in order to make Qin Sheng eat more. Originally, Qin Ran had planned to open a bottle of wine to welcome her brother home. However, the atmosphere seemed to be not suitable. As a result, she could only give up. After Qin Sheng finished a bowl of rice, he stood up immediately and said, "I'm full." After that, Qin Sheng turned around and left, heading to the outside of the yard. This place made him feel suffocated. As a result, he needed to go out to breathe. Qin Ran glanced at the old man opposite her and found that the old man did not have any reaction. As a result, she followed him out. After catching up with Qin Sheng at the door, Qin Ran said helplessly, "Since you are not willing to stay here, I will take you away." After that, she pulled Qin Sheng out and drove the Land Rover at the door directly to Yinchi Lake. She did not say goodbye to Qin Chang'an again. To be honest, Qin Ran had planned to take Qin Sheng to pay respects to her mother after lunch. However, judging from Qin Sheng's current state, it was obviously not suitable. As a result, she could only wait until they came back from Yinchi Lake. Hearing the sound of the car outside, Gongsun followed them out. Originally, he wanted to say something to them. However, after thinking that Qin Ran would definitely arrange everything, he went back to the dining room. Qin Chang'an asked without raising his head, "Are they gone?" Gongsun sighed. Originally, he thought that when they came back, they would be reunited with their family, who knew that it was not as beautiful as he had imagined. As expected, the thing that he was most worried about happened. He smiled bitterly and said, "They are gone." Qin Chang'an arranged casually, "There are still many things in the company that Ran needs to deal with. Let him stay alone quietly. Send Nangong to keep an eye on him." Chapter 356. Breaking the deadlock. Yinchi Lake was located at the foot of Mount Yin in the north of Huairou City, northeast of Beijing. It was adjacent to the Great Wall in the north and the North China Plain in the south. The surface of Yinchi Lake was wide and crystal clear. Flocks of wild geese often came to rest in spring and autumn every year, so it got its name. It was surrounded by mountains on three sides, which formed a natural barrier. The lake area was not invaded by wind and sand. The air was humid all year round, and the environment was very good. Therefore, it was developed in recent years. Especially this year, several major international conferences were held here, which made Yinchi Lake more famous. There was a distance of 60 kilometers from downtown to Yinchi Lake. Qin Ran was very experienced in driving. She was calm and steady much better than those killers on the road. She remembered that when she first learned to drive, Qin Chang'an gave her a Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG. Everyone said that women were more suitable for cars or sports cars. Only Qin Chang'an thought that women driving off-road vehicles were more charming. On the way, Qin Sheng still did not speak. Qin Ran tried to find a topic several times, but found that Qin Sheng had no intention to respond. She had to stop disturbing him and let him stay quietly. When they arrived at the villa community by Yinchi Lake, Uncle Lee had already arranged for someone to send the key over. Then he took Qin Ran and Qin Sheng to a villa near the lake. The scenery here was really good. Miss Qin, I'll leave first. The driver who sent the key should be Uncle Lee's driver. After taking the siblings into the villa, he left sensibly and did not want to disturb them. Qin Sheng stood by the window of the living room and stared at the lake thoughtfully. The surface of the lake had long been frozen. Most of the flowers and trees around had fallen off. Only a few trees that could withstand the winter were still green. However, after a heavy snow, the outside world was white, which made people feel that they were at peace with the world. Uncle Lee said on the phone that this villa had not been lived in since it was renovated. Therefore, everything was new except for some daily necessities. Originally, he wanted to send someone to send them over, but Qin Ran politely refused. After all, she could not trouble others. Therefore, she planned to buy some necessities in person later, and then buy some clothes for Qin Sheng, etc. The most important thing was to eat. She definitely could not accompany Qin Sheng all the time. Therefore, after thinking about it, she felt that it was more suitable to find a reliable nanny. In the end, Qin Ran chose an aunt in the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. Although she had been in the Qin family for less than 3 years, she had a good temper and cooking skills. After they went downstairs, Qin Ran walked up to Qin Sheng and asked, "What do you think? Are you satisfied with this place?" Qin Sheng withdrew his gaze and said, "Pretty good. Then you stay here for now. I'll go out and buy some things. I'll be back soon. If you feel bored, you can go out and walk around. It snowed last night. The scenery here is very beautiful today." "You've made it in time," Qin Ran said softly. She was very clear about her position. That was, not only did she have to take on the role of a sister, but she also had to take on the role of a mother. She had to let Qin Sheng feel the warmth of a family, the care of relatives, and so on. After all, Qin Chang'an could not do these things. He had always been so serious. It was impossible for him to have a harmonious relationship with Qin Sheng like other people's father and son. Qin Sheng did not know why. Although he had just reconciled with his sister, his feelings for this sister had exploded in an instant since he returned to the old house last night. He did not feel distant at all. If there was anything, he would say it directly. Even he did not know why. Perhaps this was the power of blood. Consequently, Qin Sheng asked Qin Ran bluntly again, "Sister, if it's convenient for you, could you buy some books for me? I like to read when I'm alone." "Okay, what books do you want? I'll go to the bookstore to have a look." Qin Ran pursed her lips and smiled faintly. It was a good thing to like reading. In this society, there were too many impetuous and overconfident young people. What was lacking was a down-to-earth young man who worked hard to enrich himself. Qin Sheng replied, "Philosophy and history will be fine. You can help me choose some books at random." Qin Ran also liked reading. Her character was similar to Qin Sheng's. They had read all kinds of books. Consequently, this was not a difficult thing for her. After chatting for a while, Qin Ran left first. After all, this place was very far from the downtown area. It would take her a lot of time to go back and forth on the way. Qin Sheng stayed in the villa for a while. After that, he went out and walked around. He was familiar with the surrounding environment and felt the unique beauty of Yinchi Lake in the snow. Qin Ran came back in the evening. She bought a lot of things in big and small bags. 2 men and 2 women went with her. They helped Qin Ran carry a lot of things. Otherwise, Qin Ran would not be able to do it alone. Qin Sheng was somewhat dumbfounded. Those who did not know what was going on might think that Qin Ran went to move. He had no choice but to stand aside and watch Qin Ran arrange where to put the things. After everything was packed up, the 2 men left. Qin Ran opened a cardboard box and said, "These are all the books you want. You can have a look first. If they're not suitable for you, I will ask someone to buy them." Qin Sheng bent over and began to sort out those books. Although he had read many of them, at least they were suitable for his taste. At this time, Qin Ran pulled a middle-aged woman aside and introduced, Qin Sheng, this is Aunt Zhao. During the period when you are at Yanqi Lake, she will come over to cook and clean for you every day. Qin Sheng smiled politely and said, Hello, Aunt Zhao. It seemed that Aunt Zhao was somewhat embarrassed to see a stranger. She had been busy in the kitchen in the morning. Consequently, she did not see Qin Sheng. Consequently, she blushed slightly and said in Mandarin with a slight Shandong accent, Mr. Qin, if you need anything, just tell me. If I do not do well, you can criticize me. An honest and kind person would always be respected from the bottom of his heart. He would not be despised because of his identity. This was the bottom line of a person. Consequently, Qin Sheng just smiled and nodded at Aunt Zhao. Qin Ran arranged, Aunt Zhao, it's almost dinner time. I bought a lot of vegetables. Let my brother taste your cooking skills. Upon hearing this, Aunt Zhao nodded happily. She did not notice the key word in Qin Ran's sentence, which was my brother. If others heard this, it would definitely be a big news. Consequently, Aunt Zhao was an honest person. She only cared about saying, Okay, Mississippi, I will go to prepare dinner now. Is there anything you want to eat? Just cook some of your specialties, Qin Ran ordered casually. Aunt Zhao replied, Okay. She could not wait to walk into the kitchen. For her, the kitchen was the only place that could prove her value. She was afraid that Qin Sheng would not like her and make Qin Ran unhappy. Qin Ran took out a mobile phone from her bag and handed it to Qin Sheng. She said, This is a new mobile phone for you. The SIM card is also new. You can use this number during this period. My number has been saved in it. If you have any problems in the future, call me as soon as possible. Qin Ran had thought of everything that could be done. Qin Sheng was very touched. He said, Sister, thank you. You're my brother. Don't be so polite to me. Otherwise, I will be angry in the future, Qin Ran said discontentedly. Qin Sheng laughed and said, Okay. Qin Sheng was reading in the living room. Qin Ran and her female assistant were upstairs tidying up the bedroom for Qin Sheng. They did not disturb each other. Qin Sheng casually picked up a book called Literary Memoirs that Qin Ran had bought and read it with great interest. When he came to his senses, Qin Ran and her female assistant had already decorated the whole villa. In particular, the bouquets of flowers in the living room brought a different kind of vitality to the villa and made it more lively. Aunt Zhao had already left after preparing dinner. Qin Ran had arranged for her to stay in the nearby Kempinski Hotel so that she would not disturb Qin Sheng's life. The female assistant had also left. Thus, only Qin Ran and Qin Sheng were left in the house. It was a sumptuous dinner. Qin Ran had opened a bottle of red wine in advance and sobered up for half an hour. This wine was carefully selected by her today. Although she did not formally welcome Qin Sheng home at lunch today, after all, the relationship between Qin Chang'an and Qin Sheng was stiff at that time. There was only her and Qin Sheng now, so there was no taboo. In this case, she formally welcomed Qin Sheng home on behalf of the Qin family. Qin Ran took the initiative to raise her glass and said, Welcome home. Welcome back to Beijing. Thank you, sister, Qin Sheng said with a chuckle. Having such a beautiful sister taking care of him carefully was the biggest gain Qin Sheng had recently. It could also be considered as comforting his wounded heart. Qin Ran continued saying, No matter what you have experienced in the past, what hardships you have suffered, or what grievances you have suffered, from now on, all of these will leave you. As for those who have looked down on you and hurt you, you will return them to them in the future. From today on, you are no longer the Qin Sheng who no one cared about. You have your sister, the Qin family, and many relatives who love you dearly. Believe me, no one will hurt you anymore. No one dares to hurt you anymore. Okay. Qin Ran's words made Qin Sheng feel very warm. No one had ever said such words to him in such a domineering way. But today he had. This was his sister, his biological sister, the one and only sister. Raising his head, Qin Sheng drank up the wine in one gulp. Qin Ran followed closely behind him. The siblings put down their glasses and looked at each other with a smile. That kind of feeling instantly returned to their childhood, beyond time and space. Nothing could stop the relationship between siblings, where blood was thicker than water. Qin Ran said happily, "Eat, eat. You must be hungry now. You didn't eat much at noon. Aunt Xiao's cooking is very good. Eat quickly. I will raise you to be fair and fat." Then, she mumbled while putting food into Qin Sheng's bowl. Qin Sheng giggled and only cared about eating with his head down. He was no longer like the frosted eggplant at noon. Instead, he returned to his previous appearance of wolfing down food. After the meal, Qin Sheng took the initiative to wash the dishes. He did not leave this mess until tomorrow morning. He was used to this kind of life. Qin Ran walked to the window and thought for a long time. Finally, she chose to dial the familiar number. After all, there were some things that needed to be solved. It did not take long before the phone was connected. A man's kind voice came from the other side. He said, Ran, you haven't called me for a long time. Are you very busy recently?" Chapter 357. Uncle. He just returned to Xi'an yesterday and rested for a day. Today, he started to work hard. Qin Ran did not intend to tell her grandmother and uncle about her brother's return so soon. But now the relationship between Qin Sheng and her father was so stiff that it was hard to have a chance to ease it in a short time. Therefore, she had to find a way to replace her father and give Qin Sheng a different kind of care. Obviously, she was not suitable for this role. Because they had just established their relationship, she did not dare to mess around casually. Therefore, Qin Ran thought that only her uncle was suitable for this role. Anyway, she had to tell her uncle this news sooner or later, so she could only tell her uncle this news behind her father's back. In a heavily guarded compound in Sijio City, a middle-aged man in a military uniform had just returned home. This was a 2-story red brick building. There were guards on duty at the door. The decoration inside was very simple. Basically, there was some old furniture, but some flowers, plants, and old photos were more eye-catching. Although the middle-aged man was middle-aged, he was already in his 60s. However, he still seemed to be in high spirits. His natural dignity as a soldier made people respect him. He was still in a high position, and he had taken another step forward in the military reform. Dinner was ready in the dining room. The nanny was busy, and his wife was also helping. He had a son and a daughter, who had both got married and had children. His son took over his banner and was now working as a staff officer in a department in the Northwest. His daughter, on the other hand, was pursuing an official career. When he received the call, the middle-aged man was very happy. He loved his niece dearly from the bottom of his heart. In addition to this girl's natural charm, it was also because this girl's life was a little too bitter, which made him feel very distressed. As for those things, he had always been unwilling to mention or think about it. It was a taboo in the whole family. Usually, this girl would call him every week to say hello, and every month she would take time to visit them. However, there had been no news from her recently. As the end of the year was approaching, he was a little busy, so he did not pay much attention to it. Until today, when this girl called, it reminded him that he had not seen this girl for a long time. He could not help but feel a little guilty, feeling that he lacked care for her. After the call was connected, this girl told him the news, which made the middle-aged man, who had experienced many life and death situations, a little uneasy because this news was too shocking. The middle-aged man stood in the living room in a daze. For a moment, he did not come back to his senses. He had found his brother. This sentence had a huge impact on him. "Little guy, what do you want to do when you grow up?" "Mom said that uncle is a hero, so I want to be like uncle and become a soldier to protect the country when I grow up. Are you afraid of hardship?" "Not afraid." At this time, a woman walked over and said discontentedly, "Little guy, didn't you just tell me that you want to be a teacher when you grow up? Why did you change your mind so quickly?" "Little aunt doesn't give me candy, but uncle gives me candy," the little girl said seriously with a lollipop in her mouth. In an instant, the whole family burst into laughter at this fellow's reality. He really was the joker of the whole family. The reason why the middle-aged man and the whole Zhu family doted on this niece so much was that her mother died young, her younger brother suddenly disappeared, and her father was busy with his career. No one in the Qin family cared about this child, so the Zhu family doted on her even more. As for the nephew, the middle-aged man felt more guilty than his niece. So what if he was in a high position? So what if he was omnipotent? So many years had passed, and he could not even find his own nephew. Didn't he still have nothing to do? In the beginning, every family gathering, if someone accidentally mentioned the sigh of the little guy, the whole family would sigh with emotion, and the atmosphere would instantly drop to the freezing point. The old man was not so sad in front of outsiders, but the old lady could not help crying in a low voice. So later, everyone formed a tacit understanding that they were not allowed to mention this matter in front of the old man, the old lady, and Ran. Not mentioning it did not mean that the Zhu family did not try hard to find him. More than 20 years had passed. Every time there was a clue, they would immediately send people to look for him, but in the end, it was in vain. But today, the middle-aged man did not expect that after more than 20 years, when he had already given up hope, Qin Ran suddenly told him that his nephew had been found. After the shock, he instantly had an impulse to cry with joy. However, after all, the middle-aged man was not an ordinary person. He forced himself to calm down and then fell into deep thought. It was a little sudden, and he had to figure out the ins and outs of the matter. After all, with the status of the Qin family and the background of the Zhu family, he could not rule out the possibility that someone had ulterior motives. If someone had really done this, it would be a second injury to Ran, and he would definitely not let it go. In the dining room, a well-maintained, middle-aged woman saw the man in a daze in the living room and shouted subconsciously, "Lao Zhu, why are you in a daze? Come and have dinner." His wife's voice made the man come to his senses. He pointed at his mobile phone to his wife, and she immediately understood that she would not disturb him, because every time she did this, something important had happened. In the villa, Qin Ran knew that the news would shock her uncle, so she was not in a hurry to say anything. She waited for her uncle to calm down. The middle-aged man could not help but ask, Ran, is what you said true?" Qin Ran knew that her uncle would not believe her so easily, so she replied, "Uncle, if I had not confirmed it, I would not have told you. Last night, I took him back to Beijing from Tsingtao. Now he is by my side, and my father has already seen him." Upon hearing her words, the middle-aged man felt much more at ease in an instant, and his doubts were mostly eliminated. However, he still needed to confirm it again and again, so he said, Ran, where are you now?" Qin Ran said honestly, "My brother is not in a good state, and the relationship between him and my father is a little stiff. So I took him to Yinchi Lake to calm down." The middle-aged man hesitated for a while and said, "Send me a specific location, and I will ask the driver to pick you up. I will ask him about the specific things when I see you." Qin Ran could understand her uncle's mood, although she wanted to accompany Qin Sheng here tonight. Since her uncle had said so, it showed that he attached great importance to this matter. She replied, "No, uncle, I can drive there." The middle-aged man said straightforwardly, "It's late at night, and it's snowing today. The road is not good. Listen to me, you can wait there." His tone did not allow anyone to refute him. Qin Ran hesitated for a few seconds, but she could only nod and agree. After hanging up the phone, Qin Ran went back to the living room. Qin Sheng had already finished his work, washed some fruits, and was reading the literary memoirs. Qin Ran peeled an orange for him and said, "Qin Sheng, I will not accompany you here tonight. I have something to deal with later. I will come to see you tomorrow. Is it okay for you to stay here alone?" Qin Sheng raised his head and put down the book in his hand. He took the orange from Qin Ran and said casually, "Well, it's okay. Sister, you go ahead with your work. I have been used to being alone." Qin Sheng said casually, but his words made Qin Ran feel somewhat uncomfortable. She felt suffocated at that moment. Seeing Qin Ran's look, Qin Sheng instantly understood what was going on. He felt that he should be more cautious when talking to his sister in the future. His seemingly indifferent words would make his sister feel different. Consequently, Qin Sheng said in a hurry, I like to be alone." Qin Ran did not say anything more. She did not want to delve into this topic. Otherwise, if she was unhappy, her brother would think too much. Consequently, she found a random topic to divert his attention. The sister and brother chatted casually in the living room. About an hour later, Qin Ran's phone rang. She picked up the phone and said a few words before hanging up. Her uncle's driver had already arrived outside the villa. She stood up and began to pack up her things. Then she said to Qin Sheng, I will leave now. Qin Sheng stood up immediately and said, Sister, let me walk you out. No, it's cold outside. Qin Ran refused. Qin Sheng ignored Qin Ran's words. He picked up her bag and walked out. Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She had to follow him out. There was an Audi with a military license plate parked outside the door. The license plate looked very eye-catching. Of course, Qin Sheng noticed this detail, but he did not say anything or ask anything. He waved to Qin Ran and said, Tell me when you arrive. Then he watched Qin Ran get into the car and leave. When Qin Sheng went back to the living room of the villa, he felt a sense of loneliness and desolation. This kind of feeling was very terrible. Usually, a person would have this feeling when he felt empty and lonely. It also showed that this person's heart was fragile. Qin Sheng did not want to suffer in this kind of feeling. Consequently, he went upstairs directly to take a shower and was ready to go to bed. When he was lying on the bed after taking a shower, Qin Sheng subconsciously picked up his phone. This was the new phone his sister had just bought for him today. There was only his sister's number in it. However, Qin Sheng remembered many people's numbers. Consequently, he was thinking whether he should contact them now and tell them that he was all right. His wandering life had come to an end. The experience of being on tenterhooks and being embarrassed had also come to an end. However, Qin Sheng finally gave up because his mentality had not changed yet. He did not know how to explain many things. Consequently, he decided to contact them again after he had completely digested and accepted everything. This time, Qin Sheng slept until 8:30 a.m. He did not get up until Aunt Zhao had already prepared breakfast. He greeted Aunt Zhao, washed up, and had breakfast. Qin Sheng was a little bored. He wanted to go out for a walk. After saying goodbye to Aunt Zhao, he went out. It seemed that it had snowed last night. The scenery outside was still so amazing. This was the unique scenery in the north. Qin Sheng had not seen it for a long time. He strolled in the community alone. The scenery on the mountain was more beautiful. Consequently, Qin Sheng planned to go to the back of the mountain. However, he always felt that someone was following him or that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. Chapter 358. Don't Bully Women. Chapter 357. Don't Bully Women. Although Qin Sheng's mental state was a bit poor because of all kinds of things recently, his natural vigilance was still there. After all, this was the instinct he had been trained by his grandfather in Zhongnan Mountains. In the past, fighting with animals in Zhongnan Mountains and Qinling Mountains was not easier than fighting with his own kind in the city. Therefore, Qin Sheng's intuition told him that someone was definitely spying on him. Who was spying on him? The answer was obviously not so difficult to guess. Obviously, besides Qin Chang'an, it could only be his enemies in Hangzhou. However, he had already gotten rid of them in Huangmei Town. Moreover, he had gone at Tsingtao. Therefore, it was impossible for them to show up here. If they were really Qin Chang'an's subordinates, Qin Sheng would be even angrier because he was originally dissatisfied with Qin Chang'an. Could it be that in Qin Chang'an's eyes, he was a good-for-nothing with no ability at all? Or Qin Chang'an still wanted to control him firmly in his palm? To know his news at any time and any place? Therefore, Qin Sheng wanted to tell Qin Chang'an, although you are my father, I haven't really accepted you. Don't continue to treat me in the way you treat me. I'm not a good-for-nothing. Qin Sheng suddenly sped up and rushed to the front. After jumping over 2 obstacles, he observed the route and the view at the same time. He turned right conveniently at the T-junction of the residential area. The view of these villas was not in the range of the person behind the monitor. Therefore, Qin Sheng had more chances to choose an ambush. Of course, it was Nangong who was spying on Qin Sheng. When Nangong received Gongsun's call, she came to Yinshi Lake unwillingly. On the way there, she cursed Qin Sheng a lot. Beijing was a world of ice and snow. Originally, Nangong had planned to go to Hainan to rest for half a month and come back before the Spring Festival. It did not occur to her that a new task would be arranged for her. It's okay if you don't let me go to Hainan. At least, you can let me stay at home and enjoy the heat. But coming here to spy on Qin Sheng is totally a torture. However, although Nangong was very unwilling, she could only come here obediently. After all, it was his foster father's order, and Qin Sheng was his foster father's son. The treatment was different for those who were close to him and those who were not. Nangong, Qin Ran, and Qin Sheng arrived at Yinchi Lake almost one after the other. They stayed in the villa opposite them, which had been vacant for a long time. It was unknown how Gong's son got the key. Nangong moved in just like that. She was smart. She got a pair of binoculars and pointed them at Qin Sheng's villa. Then, she pointed the surveillance camera at the mouth of the binoculars. In this way, she could sit inside, drink coffee, watch a movie, and monitor Qin Sheng at the same time. Occasionally, he would come over to the window and take a look. When Qin Sheng went out, he would follow him out. Therefore, after Qin Sheng came out, Nangong had been hiding behind Qin Sheng, keeping a sufficient distance from him. As long as Qin Sheng did not get out of his sight, he would not run away. However, what he did not expect was that Qin Sheng suddenly sped up and ran forward. Nangong did not know what was going on and could only follow him in a hurry. However, because the distance was too far, she only saw Qin Sheng turn right at the intersection. She did not know where he went after the right turn. She definitely did not know that this was Qin Sheng's plot. After Nangong turned right at the intersection, she looked up and found that Qin Sheng had already disappeared. At this time, Nangong was a little flustered and did not know what to do. If Qin Sheng really left like this, her foster father would definitely blame her. Therefore, Nangong had to think of a solution quickly. Should she continue to chase him or directly ask the property management to check the surveillance camera? At the same time, she was considering whether she should inform her foster father or not. Just when Nangong was hesitating, she felt a lot of snow falling from the top of her head in an instant and the rustling of leaves. Nangong had an intuition that something was wrong. She looked up subconsciously and saw a black shadow falling from the sky, heading straight for her. Nangong hurriedly retreated. Her reaction was considered timely, but it was too late. This black shadow directly pressed her down to the ground. It was a heavy fall. This black shadow was not someone else. It was Qin Sheng, who had ambushed in advance. After he turned the corner, he was thinking about how to set a trap for the people behind him. Seeing the big trees on both sides of the road, he instantly had an idea. When he was a child in Zhongnan Mountains, Qin Sheng often climbed trees to catch birds and fruits. He also set traps for animals. He sat on the trees and ate fruits, waiting for the prey to take the bait. Therefore, climbing trees was not a difficult thing for Qin Sheng. Moreover, this was the blind spot of the people behind him. Even if they chased him, they would not notice this tree on the side. This was the blind spot of the people behind him. Qin Sheng was very thoughtful. However, he did not expect that the people behind him would actually stop here when they chased him. It was really the prey that came to him. He did not realize that this was Nangong. After all, Nangong was wearing a hat and a scarf, and he could not see her face at all. Therefore, Nangong was controlled by Qin Sheng to the ground. Their actions looked a little indecent. Nangong wanted to resist, but Qin Sheng's strength was not weaker than hers. If it was a head-on confrontation, Qin Sheng might not be Nangong's match. However, Qin Sheng took the initiative, so he had the upper hand. Nangong was the first to see Qin Sheng's face. She was at a loss and shouted, "What do you want?" Qin Sheng squinted and said, "It turns out to be you." As for Nangong, Qin Sheng was not a stranger to her these days. However, they did not communicate much with each other. Although Nangong was a great beauty that made men drool, Qin Sheng was not interested in her at this moment, because she was Qin Chang'an's woman. Nangong had stopped struggling. She snorted and said, "Is it fun to play like this? Did Qin Chang'an send you here?" Qin Sheng asked in reply. The two of them were asking each other questions, and they were not on the same line at all. The ground was very cold. Qin Sheng felt comfortable, but Nangong was very uncomfortable. Moreover, she had fallen heavily just now. She said angrily, "Do you think I want to come here? Get up." Qin Sheng would not have tender feelings for the fairer sex. He replied, "You can let me get up. Go back and tell Qin Chang'an not to send people to spy on me. I'm not his puppet." This was the matter between Qin Sheng and Qin Chang'an. Nangong did not care about it. She only did what she should do, so she shouted, "It's none of my business. If you have the ability, tell him yourself. Get up." Qin Sheng still did not want to get up. This time, Nangong was really angry. She thought, "If I don't show my power, do you think I'm a coquettish green tea bitch?" Consequently, Nangong suddenly exerted her strength. She broke free from Qin Sheng's restraint with her left hand and grabbed his neck. With the help of the force from her abdomen, she directly threw Qin Sheng out. Qin Sheng had never seen Nangong fight. He thought that she was a weak woman who did not have the strength to truss up a chicken. Consequently, when he found it was Nangong, he did not pay much attention to it. However, it did not occur to him that Nangong took the opportunity and directly suffered a loss. After Qin Sheng, who was unprepared, was thrown out, he directly rolled on the ground. There was a lot of snow on his body, and he looked somewhat embarrassed. Nangong jumped up and knelt on the ground on one leg, which was a standard posture of a female killer. She looked like a widow in a Marvel movie, which was very attractive. "It did not occur to me that you were actually a martial artist. I was too careless." Qin Sheng, who got up again, had already understood. If she was not a martial artist, she would not have such great strength. How could an ordinary woman throw him over? Nangong taught him another lesson. Never look down on any opponent, including beautiful and harmless women. At the critical moment, they could totally kill you without any effort. Since ancient times, countless heroes and warriors had died in the hands of women, especially beautiful women. Nangong sneered and said, "You just realized it? In that case, I will teach you a lesson. Don't bully women." When Qin Sheng was still thinking about what she meant, Nangong had already rushed over. Qin Sheng immediately stopped slacking and became serious. Since Nangong dared to be so confident, it was obvious that she was powerful. If he lost to a woman, he would really lose his face. In the blink of an eye, Nangong had already rushed in front of Qin Sheng. Her long legs, which were wearing high-heel boots, kicked toward Qin Sheng's face. Qin Sheng did not have the chance to retreat, nor did he intend to dodge. He straightened his arms and shoulders directly to form a line of defense and directly took this heavy blow from Nangong. He was so eager to know Nangong's power. Although his shoulders were a little painful, Qin Sheng could still accept it. He definitely did not know that Nangong had hidden his strength. Because of his identity, he could not hurt him. Qin Sheng leaned sideways and took advantage of the situation. He punched toward Nangong's abdomen. After all, there was no defense here. Obviously, he looked down on Nangong's strength. Since Nangong could follow Zhuang Zhou to protect him and kill his opponent by the riverside of Huangmei Town, how could she be an ordinary person? Nangong was not afraid in the face of danger. Before Qin Sheng's arms could exert force, she had already entangled Qin Sheng's arms with her hands, leaving Qin Sheng no chance at all. Qin Sheng had a countermeasure. He kicked toward Nangong's one leg, which was supporting on the ground. He was waiting for Nangong's embarrassing look to see what other tricks she could play. Nangong was slightly disdainful. Since Qin Sheng's arm was still under her control, this was her chance. As a result, Nangong suddenly pulled with force. With the help of Qin Sheng's strength, she withdrew the leg which she had kicked out. Following that, the supporting leg bounced up from the ground and dodged Qin Sheng's attack. However, this was not the end, because her purpose was not to dodge, but to take the initiative to attack. It could be seen that this leg directly kicked toward Qin Sheng's chest in the opposite direction. Qin Sheng turned pale with fright. It did not occur to him that there was such a maneuver. He really looked down on Nangong too much. This was not a choice that an ordinary martial arts practitioner could make. When he came to himself, it was already too late. Nangong's leg directly hit his chest. Nangong's hands, which were entangled with his arms, also loosened. Qin Sheng staggered backward. He wanted to use the force to steady himself. However, it was useless even after he took a few steps backward continuously. It was unknown whether God was punishing Qin Sheng on purpose or something else. Behind him was the stone edge of the road. Qin Sheng did not pay attention to it at all. Then he was tripped and fell backward. With a bang, he fell into the snow pile and became a snowman. Nangong saw this funny scene. She laughed at him without any disguise. It was because Qin Sheng's current look was really embarrassing. Chapter 359. Complete. Victory. Nangong recalled Uncle Zhuang's words. Our young master is not simple. If there's a chance, you guys can learn from each other. At that time, Nangong was wondering why Uncle Zhuang said that. Could it be that this young master had some ability? She had never seen this young master in action and thought that he was an expert who kept a low profile. However, from the looks of it today, it was just so. He did have some skills, and it was enough to deal with ordinary people. However, he could only blame it on his bad luck to deal with her. You actually dared to set me up. You really don't know how many eyes Lorma has. I'll teach you to remember this in the future, and don't ask for trouble again. Originally, Nangong was still a little angry. However, when she saw Qin Sheng falling into the snow pile and looking like a snowman, she could not help but point at Qin Sheng and laugh at him. She did not have any of the aura of a female killer just now, but had some innocence of a young girl. Qin Sheng climbed out of the snow pile with difficulty. He directly took off his coat and cleaned the snow on his body. Most of the snow that had gotten into his clothes had melted and turned into snow water that flowed down, making Qin Sheng very uncomfortable. After all, it was already like this. After going back, he could take a shower and change his clothes. This was not a big deal for Qin Sheng. However, he still had to settle the score with Nangong. If he had the ability, he would definitely take revenge on the spot. He would not let Nangong off just because she was a beauty. To put it nicely, she was a rose with thorns, but to put it bluntly, she was a poisonous woman. Qin Sheng glared at Nangong angrily. It was because Nangong's laughter was too ear-piercing and disgusting. As a result, Qin Sheng said angrily, "Are you done laughing?" "Not yet. Don't you think it's funny?" "What's wrong? Your skills are inferior, and you don't want me to laugh? Where's that smug look you had when you were riding on top of me?" The sharp-tongued Nangong retorted, not noticing the faulty wording in his words. "What do you mean by riding on my body?" Those who didn't know would think that something had happened. Qin Sheng seized this point on purpose to irritate Nangong and said, "Oh, I want to ride on you." Hearing Qin Sheng's words, Nangong understood. Blushing slightly, she said somewhat exasperatedly, "You are courting death. If you were not my foster father's son, I would have killed you long ago." "Kill me? Come on. I underestimated you just now and let you take advantage of the loophole. Now I'll give you another chance." Qin Sheng continued to challenge Nangong's bottom line. Originally, Nangong had a bad temper. This time, the anger in her heart was completely ignited by Qin Sheng. Just now, she was still somewhat afraid. At this moment, she had already made up her mind to teach Qin Sheng a good lesson today. Even if she would be blamed or punished by her foster father and sister Ran later, she would not care. Consequently, she said angrily, "You are really reckless. In that case, I will let you get what you want. Not everyone has to spoil you." Qin Sheng did not want to talk nonsense with her. What was the point of talking so much? Anyway, he was going to pay her back. Therefore, before Nangong finished her words, Qin Sheng rushed up and punched Nangong's waist. This time, the two of them were going to fight for real. The security guard in the villa area happened to pass by. When he saw the situation, he quickly shouted, "What are you doing?" The two of them did not care about this at all. Nobody could stop them. Nangong took 2 steps back and dodged this attack. At the same time, she made a counterattack quickly. She lifted her knee and hit Qin Sheng's abdomen. Qin Sheng blocked Nangong's knee with both of his hands. Unexpectedly, Nangong's strength was too strong. In addition, the ground was quite slippery. Consequently, he was pushed back a few steps by the huge force. He did not stop until he reached the curb. Qin Sheng took advantage of the momentum and pushed Nangong out. However, at the same time, Nangong attacked Qin Sheng's face with her elbow. Qin Sheng was startled. This woman was really ruthless. If this elbow came, his face would definitely blossom. Consequently, Qin Sheng bent down and dodged it. At the same time, he directly hugged Nangong, who was unguarded. Nangong's expression changed slightly. She directly hit Qin Sheng's back with her elbow again. Qin Sheng let out a muffled groan. This elbow made him grimace in pain. However, Qin Sheng's original intention was not to fight to the death with Nangong. He just wanted to save his face. Otherwise, he would be laughed at by Nangong. Moreover, he also felt that he might not be Nangong's match. Therefore, he came up with this plan and forcibly took this elbow. Seeing that Qin Sheng did not intend to let go at all, Nangong lifted her knee and hit Qin Sheng again. At the same time, Qin Sheng directly roared and directly hugged Nangong by her waist, preparing to throw her into the snowdrift. The two of them almost exerted their strength at the same time. Nangong's knee also hit Qin Sheng's left shoulder. The two forces directly brought the two of them back. Therefore, the scene of Qin Sheng falling into the snowdrift just now appeared again. However, this time, it was not Qin Sheng alone. Instead, he fell into the snowdrift together with Nangong. One person's embarrassment became two people's embarrassment. Anyway, Qin Sheng already had a previous record, so he did not mind being a snowman again. It was just that his shoulders and back were in pain for being beaten by Nangong, this vicious woman. Nangong was a bit miserable. The snowdrift on her side was thicker than that on Qin Sheng's side. Therefore, her whole body was covered with snow. At this moment, she had already lost her mind and even had the intention to kill Qin Sheng. Of course, he could not show off. Qin Sheng had regained his dignity and also paid back the losses he had suffered. He knew that with Nangong's temper, she would definitely fight with him with her life if she got up. Therefore, Qin Sheng, who had taken advantage of her, stood up quickly. He did not even care about the snow on his body and started to run. He did not even look at Nangong, who had not gotten up yet. The security guard wanted to stop Qin Sheng. How could he compare with Qin Sheng's skills? He was directly shaken off. He had no choice but to call other security guard for support. It was not until then that Nangong got up from the snowdrift. Indeed, she wanted to fight with Qin Sheng with her life. Qin Sheng had really provoked her. However, when she got up, she only saw a black shadow running for his life. If it was not Qin Sheng, who else could it be? Nangong became more and more angry. She shouted in exasperation, "Qin Sheng, stop right there. I'm going to kill you." After that, she chased after Qin Sheng and started a life and death chase in the snow. The security guard followed them. Panting, Qin Sheng, who could walk in the mountains as if on flat ground, did not give Nangong any chance at all. He ran away like a wisp of smoke and did not stop until he reached the villa. When Aunt Zhao opened the door for Qin Sheng, she was stunned when she saw that Qin Sheng was covered with snow and muddy water on his body and face. She did not know what had happened. "Aunt Zhao, I'm going to take a shower and change my clothes. I accidentally fell just now," Qin Sheng explained casually. After that, he changed his clothes and went upstairs to take a shower. Aunt Zhao closed the door and was ready to go back to the kitchen to continue cooking lunch. She had not taken a few steps when the doorbell rang again. Aunt Zhao thought that it was Qin Ran, so she turned back to open the door. When she opened the door and saw that it was Nangong, she said in surprise, "Miss Nangong, why are you here?" The people in the Sihiyuan were familiar with Nangong. They knew that she was Qin Chang'an's adopted daughter. Therefore, they all called her Miss Nangong. Sometimes they would call her Second Miss in private. Nangong said angrily, "Aunt Zhao, where is Qin Sheng?" It was not until then that Aunt Zhao noticed that Nangong looked almost the same as Qin Sheng at this moment. Her hair was messy and there were many water droplets on her body and face. She was very confused. What on earth had happened? He wanted to take a shower. Aunt Zhao said honestly. Nangong did not even change her shoes. She directly rushed up to the second floor and searched for Qin Sheng's traces in several rooms upstairs. Finally, she found a guest room. Hearing the sound of water in the bathroom, Nangong did not care about anything else. She just wanted to kill Qin Sheng to vent her anger. Even if she did not dare to kill him, she would beat him half to death. Therefore, she rushed into the room angrily and opened the door of the bathroom without any resistance. She thought that Qin Sheng was hiding here on purpose and did not dare to come out. Therefore, she shouted, "Qin Sheng, come out." Qin Sheng had guessed that Nan Gong might break in. Therefore, he did not close the door on purpose to make things difficult for her again. However, he did not expect that Nan Gong would really rush in without any scruples. He really took a shower, not to hide from Nan Gong. After all, there was a lot of snow on his body, and his clothes were already wet. Therefore, when Nan Gong Zhen came in, Qin Sheng was also shocked. He covered his lower body and shouted, "Molestation!" This directly woke Nan Gong up. She did not expect that Qin Sheng was really taking a shower. At this moment, Nan Gong did not know what to do in front of her. After all, she was a woman who was inexperienced and had never seen a man's naked body. Therefore, she did not know how to deal with it. After all, she was a married woman. After all, she was experienced and would not care about Qin Sheng's trick. In the blink of an eye, Nan Gong came to her senses. If this was known by others, it would be terrible. Therefore, she shouted, "Are you crazy?" As the victim, Qin Sheng deliberately replied in a wrong tone, "Why are you still looking?" Before Qin Sheng finished speaking, Nan Gong had already run away with a red face. Only Qin Sheng was left behind, shouting, "Close the door." Nan Gong did not have the face to come back and closed the door for Qin Sheng. After making sure that Nan Gong Zhen had left, Qin Sheng laughed unscrupulously. Today, except for a little loss in the middle, it should be said that it was a complete victory. Women, after all, were women. Moreover, women like Nan Gong were not as thick-skinned as men. After taking a shower, Qin Sheng changed his clothes and went downstairs unhurriedly. To his surprise, Nan Gong did not leave. She was sitting on the sofa, watching TV, eating fruits, and chatting with Aunt Zhao. Qin Sheng was subconsciously stunned. Nan Gong also noticed Qin Sheng and immediately stood up. Qin Sheng was shocked. This woman would not stop until she was dead. Therefore, he questioned, "What are you going to do? What do you think?" Nan Gong sneered. This time, Qin Sheng had nowhere to run. His only savior was Aunt Zhao. Therefore, like grasping a drowning straw, he shouted, "Aunt Zhao, call my sister. Nan Gong wants to kill me." In Aunt Zhao's eyes, the tit-for-tat between Nan Gong and Qin Sheng was just a child's play. Therefore, she chuckled and said, "Mr. Qin, Miss Nan Gong, stop it. It's time for lunch." Nan Gong had already calmed down. It was impossible for her to do anything to Qin Sheng in front of Aunt Zhao. Hearing Aunt Zhao's words, she glared at Qin Sheng and followed Aunt Zhao to the dining room. Chapter 360. A man and a woman last night. Aunt Zhao went back to the hotel after cooking, leaving Qin Sheng and Qin ran alone. Then they ate something in the hotel casually. In the Sihiyuan, the servants and nannies had their own dining room. Except for Gongsun, no one else was qualified to eat in the dining room of the main building. At this moment, after Aunt Zhao served the dishes, she was ready to go upstairs to clean Qin Sheng's room and wash the clothes he had just changed. When Aunt Zhao was about to leave, Qin Sheng stopped her. "Aunt Zhao, where are you going? Don't you want to eat?" Aunt Zhao smiled awkwardly. "You eat first. I'm going to clean the room. I'll eat after you finish." Aunt Zhao knew the rule of being a nanny. It was also the rule of a rich family that the master and the servant should not sit at the same table. But Qin Sheng did not care about that. Moreover, this was not the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. So he said, "The dishes will be cold soon. Sit down and eat with us. There are not so many rules here. You can clean the room after eating." Aunt Zhao was at a loss. After all, she had guessed Qin Sheng's identity, but she was not sure. No one had told her the exact information. However, she was a little touched in her heart. She did not expect Qin Sheng to be so amiable and approachable. If Qin Sheng was the only one here, she might sit down. However, after all, Nan Gong was here. If she told Big Miss about this, it would be bad if she was fired later. So Aunt Zhao said timidly, "I don't think it's appropriate." "Aunt Zhao, just sit down and eat." Nan Gong tried to persuade Qin Sheng. Then she stared at Qin Sheng. Since Qin Sheng and Nan Gong had said so, Aunt Zhao sat down anxiously and hurriedly served rice and soup to Qin Sheng and Nan Gong. In fact, Qin Sheng did this because he was not used to this kind of life. Secondly, Nangong was sitting opposite him. If Aunt Zhao was not here, he was afraid that she would flip the table and fight. When the three of them were eating, the doorbell rang again. Aunt Zhao hurried to open the door. She thought it was Qin Ran, but she did not expect it to be the security guard of the residential area. The security guard could not keep up with Qin Sheng and Nangong at all. In the end, he had to check the surveillance video and found that they entered the villa one after another. Then he came to ask about the situation. Qin Sheng stood up and went over to explain. He said that it was just a joke between the brother and sister. It was nothing serious. Unknowingly, he took advantage of Nangong again. The security guard also saw that the beauty was eating inside. He casually muttered a few words and told her to be more careful in the future. The floor was slippery in this heavy snow. What she got hurt? After lunch, Nangong was ready to go back to the opposite villa. Although he had been exposed in front of Qin Sheng, he still had to do what he should do. Qin Sheng asked casually, "Are you going back to the city or back to your stronghold? If you returned to the stronghold, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Anyway, I already know your existence. Since Qin Chang'an asked you to monitor me, you can live here. Isn't it better to be closer?" Qin Sheng suddenly did not play by the rules, which made Nangong a little confused. What was he up to? She turned around and stared at him for a few seconds, trying to figure out what he wanted to do. Qin Sheng said honestly, "Don't worry. I have no interest in you. Instead of being monitored by you secretly, I'd better let you stay here. At least I will feel more comfortable." He really did not like the life of being monitored by others. He always felt that there was no privacy at all, and he felt uncomfortable doing anything. Nangong said thoughtfully, "Are you sure?" "Nonsense. You can't eat me up, can you?" Qin Sheng said disapprovingly. After that, he did not intend to pay attention to Nangong anymore. He casually lay on the sofa and continued to read his deeply poisoned book. Nangong did not refuse. Since Qin Sheng said so, it saved her a lot of trouble. However, she still had to report to Uncle Gong's son. If her foster father agreed, she would move here directly. After making up her mind, Nangong finally walked out of the villa. She called Uncle Gong's son first. Even if she really wanted to live under the same roof with Qin Sheng, she had to go over and move her things here. Half an hour later, Nangong returned to the villa again. Her foster father had agreed. She told Uncle Gong's son what had happened in the morning, including what Qin Sheng had said at that time. Of course, she would definitely not tell him some things. When Nangong moved in, Qin Sheng, who was lying on the sofa and reading, had already fallen asleep. The book was clasped to his chest. Nangong muttered a few words and went upstairs to watch TV series. Her only hobby was watching American TV series and movies. She did not usually go shopping. Every time, it was Qin Ran who took her to go shopping. Qin Sheng slept until 5 p.m. Aunt Zhao took a blanket and covered him. Nangong was not in the mood to take care of Qin Sheng. It was not until Aunt Zhao was cooking dinner in the kitchen that Qin Sheng woke up. Qin Sheng looked at the time and found it was already past 5 p.m. He was somewhat surprised. He did not know why he could sleep so much recently. The more he slept, the more sleepy he became. He looked very listless. It seemed that the state of human beings was like this. The worse one's spirit was, the more listless he would be, as if he had fallen into an endless abyss and could not climb out no matter how hard he tried. When one's spirit was good, he would be more energetic, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He would not feel tired even if he did not sleep for 2 days. Qin Sheng felt that this was not good. He was very disgusted with his current self. Without saying goodbye to anyone, Qin Sheng changed his shoes and went out to buy cigarettes. After that, he chatted with the security guard at the entrance of the residential area for a while. When he came back, Aunt Zhao had already prepared dinner. Seeing that Qin Sheng was not there, Nangong was somewhat worried that he had run away. Nangong questioned him, "Where did you go?" Qin Sheng found it funny and said, "Do I have to report everything I do to you? Do you need to sleep in the same bed at night? In this way, you can keep an eye on me all the time." Nangong cursed him for being a hooligan and turned around to go to the kitchen. Qin Sheng ate very little at dinner. He went to the basement after finishing a bowl of rice. It was not until then that he found that there was a gym and a billiard table in the basement. Qin Sheng was good at billiard. In high school, Apart from playing games in the internet cafe, their entertainment was playing board games and billiard. Not only was he good at billiard, but Hao Lei and the others were also masters, including Su Qin. They often competed and made bets. Whoever lost would have to pay for their meals. The team of Qin Sheng and Su Qin won more than they lost. In fact, Su Qin, who was originally quiet, did not like these things. She preferred to play the piano and read books. However, when Qin Sheng and the others played, she also wanted to join them. She did not want to be bored alone. When Qin Sheng first taught her, she could not learn it no matter how hard she tried. Hao Lei and the others often laughed at her for being stupid. Therefore, after Su Qin returned home, she hired a billiard teacher to teach her every weekend. 2 months later, Su Qin finished her apprenticeship. She defeated Hao Lei and the others in seconds, which shocked everyone. At this time, Qin Sheng naturally did not think of Su Qin. He did not know whether this woman, who cried bitterly on the street of Hangzhou in the heavy rain that day, had completely given up on him. It was not easy to meet each other. It was heartbreaking to miss each other. Unfortunately, not every lover who used to love deeply could grow old with each other. What could be the fastest way to adjust one's mental state? That was exercise. Qin Sheng had not been to the gym for some days. He seldom went there since he arrived in Hangzhou. When he was in Shanghai, he would find time to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. When he was in Xiamen, he basically spent most of his time in the gym to recover his health. However, when he was in Hangzhou, he seldom went there because he had too many trivial things to deal with. It was no wonder that when he was fleeing for his life in Huangmei town, he obviously felt that his body was not as strong as he wished. On the treadmill, Qin Sheng was sweating profusely. It did not take long for his clothes to be completely soaked. Qin Sheng simply took off his shirt and continued to run bare-chested. After running for 10 kilometers, he began to practice the equipment. He was very familiar with all these. When Nangong first came down and saw that Qin Sheng was running, she felt bored and went up again. It was not until Aunt Zhao went back to the hotel that she came down again. After all, she needed to check what Qin Sheng was doing after a period of time. When she saw that Qin Sheng was bare-chested and sweaty all over, she could not help but be somewhat shocked. That was because she saw those shocking scars on Qin Sheng's body, especially the few on his back. It was said that scars were a man's military medal, which also represented that this man had experienced a lot. Nangong did not know what Qin Sheng had experienced. However, an ordinary person who sat around and enjoyed the fruits of others and did nothing would definitely not have such scars. Although Nangong was shocked, she still did not have a good attitude towards Qin Sheng. Wow, your figure is not bad. Qin Sheng put down the dumbbells in his hands and looked at Nangong's curvy figure with his hot eyes on purpose. He smiled and said, "Compared with you, I am still far behind." Nangong knew that no ivory could come out of a dog's mouth. She snorted and said, "If you haven't exercised for a long time, don't be so excessive on the first day. Otherwise, you will not be able to get out of bed tomorrow." After saying this, Nangong turned around and went upstairs. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. This woman seemed to have a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. However, he knew his limit. Of course, he would do it in moderation. After exercising for 2 hours, Qin Sheng was completely exhausted. After he went back, he took a shower and fell asleep immediately. He did not think about anything else. She did not know that Nangong, who was in the next room, was tossing and turning and could not fall asleep. After all, there were only 2 of them in this villa at this moment. A man and a woman alone in a room who knew what would happen. Moreover, she and Qin Sheng did not get along well. What if Qin Sheng teased her at night? However, she really thought too much. Qin Sheng did not have that kind of free time. So she waited and finally fell asleep unconsciously. In the morning, it began to snow outside again. Qin Sheng, who liked snow, did not intend to stay in the villa to waste time. He went downstairs and had breakfast. Then he changed his clothes and went out for a jog. He enjoyed running and enjoying the snow scenery on this snowy day. Nangong got up in a daze. She looked at the time and suddenly woke up. She put on her clothes and ran into Qin Sheng's room. Then she found that Qin Sheng was not there. Nangong panicked a little. She ran downstairs immediately and asked Aunt Zhao, Aunt Zhao, where is Qin Sheng? He went out for a jog. Aunt Zhao said casually. Nangong frowned and said, why didn't you wake me up? He told me to let you sleep more, so I didn't wake you up, Aunt Zhao said confusedly. Nangong sighed. She went back to her room in a hurry and washed her face casually. Then she changed her clothes and went out to look for Qin Sheng. She was really afraid that Qin Sheng had run away. At that time, she would not be able to report to her superiors. Nangong saw Qin Sheng from afar by the lake in the community. When she was about to approach him, she was blocked by two men in black coats. Nangong's expression changed slightly. She did not know who they were. Then she looked at Qin Sheng, who was not far away, and found that there was a middle-aged man with a strong aura standing beside Qin Sheng. The man's back was somewhat familiar. Chapter 361. If you want to. Nangong had already recognized this middle-aged man. Since Nangong was so determined to leave, it was obvious that Nangong trusted this middle-aged man enough that he would not pose any danger to Qin Sheng. The middle-aged man's identity was definitely not simple. Otherwise, there would not be two bodyguards blocking Nangong's path. Who could he be? It was snowing heavily at Yinchi Lake. It was said that it was no longer snowing in the downtown area. Qin Sheng had planned to climb the Great Wall and enjoy the scenery of the north while standing on the Great Wall. It was definitely a kind of enjoyment. But after thinking about it, he gave up. Firstly, it was too far away, and secondly, he would be bored if he went alone, so he came out for a jog. This community was built next to Yinchi Lake's secondary lake. It was still some distance away from the main lake, but the area was not small. At this time, it had been frozen and covered with snow. After Qin Sheng finished his run, he stood by the lake and exercised. He practiced Tai Chi for a while and practiced Wu Qinshi for a while. He felt refreshed all over. Ever since he had a good time in the gym last night, Qin Sheng felt pretty good when he woke up this morning. He did not feel sleepy anymore. It was just that his body was slightly sore, but it was not a big problem. Just as Qin Sheng was about to return to the villa, the middle-aged man appeared at the right time. He had been observing Qin Sheng from not far away for a long time. However, he did not disturb Qin Sheng and just watched quietly. Looking at his poor nephew who had been separated from him for more than 20 years, he wondered what he looked like now. Yes, he was Qin Sheng and Qin Ran's uncle, Zhu Weiguo. That night, after Qin Ran had been brought to the villa complex by him, she had chatted with the couple for a full 3 hours. In the end, Qin Ran had decided to stay at home. Qin Ran told them everything about Qin Sheng. Those things made their hearts ache. They were full of guilt towards Qin Sheng, but at the same time, they were proud of him. The innocent and naive little fellow in the past was now almost 30 years old, and he was already over 60 years old. Time passed so quickly. Time also made people grow old. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years had passed. It was as if everything had just happened yesterday. He still had photos of Qin Sheng when he was young at home. However, he had already changed his appearance and did not look like Qin Sheng at all. However, his height and appearance were similar to his uncle's. He did not embarrass the Zhu family. Young man, your Taiji fist and 5 animal frolics are pretty good. Wearing a black coat, Zhu Weiguo walked over slowly. There was a lot of snow on his hair and body, but he didn't care. Although it was the cold winter season with heavy snow, Zhu Weiguo looked particularly energetic. Every step he took was full of momentum, and there was a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness about him. Qin Sheng, who had planned to go back, stopped subconsciously. He turned around and saw Zhu Weiguo walking towards him. He frowned slightly and said, "So-so. I can't impress the experts." Zhu Weiguo was very satisfied with Qin Sheng's modesty, but it was somewhat cold and unapproachable. He replied, "Nowadays, many young people worship foreign things. Many traditional Chinese studies have been lost. For example, I don't think many young people know how to play the 5 animal frolics." As a young man, Qin Sheng had more right to speak on such matters. He did not think so. This group of young people had experienced the most complicated times, but they were most fortunate to have caught up with the country's rapid development and witnessed the country step by step to its current position. Compared to the people of the previous generation, they were now more patriotic and had a greater sense of pride for their nation and country. The simplest example was that many of the scholars of the previous generation had gone abroad, but only a few had returned. Today's group of young people, on the other hand, had mostly returned to this land that they deeply loved after going abroad. Qin Sheng shook his head and said, "What you said is a little one-sided. However, I feel that they are becoming more and more patriotic and learned. Most people's thoughts will go through 3 stages. When they see the mountain as a mountain, they see the water as water, they see the mountain as not a mountain, they see the water as not a water, they see the mountain as still a mountain, and they see the water as still water. At first, they came into contact with traditional culture. Then they slowly came into contact with Western culture. After that, they had a combination of both. In the end, they felt that China's traditional culture was more profound." Qin Sheng's words were very interesting. Zhu Weiguo nodded as he listened. It could be seen that Qin Sheng's 3 views were very correct. He was not the kind of young man he was worried about. Zhu Weiguo chuckled and said, "It seems that I am a little old. I don't understand young people now. I thought they were still the same as before." Qin Sheng smiled and said, "In the past, many people said that people born in the 1980s were the lost generation. However, today they have become the backbone of this society. Many people say that people born in the 90s are unreliable. However, today their patriotic feelings are the strongest. Many people claim to be self-righteous. In fact, it is because this country is getting stronger and stronger that the people will be more confident and proud. How can they not love their country?" Zhu Weiguo just wanted to chat with Qin Sheng and said such words casually. However, he did not expect Qin Sheng's response to be so tough. How could he, who was in a high position, not know these things? The in-depth reports of various think tanks he read every year were much more in-depth than what Qin Sheng said. However, his biggest gain was Qin Sheng's 3 views, which are what young people nowadays call positive energy. The family background of the Zhu family was originally red, so naturally, they were not willing to see their descendants deviate from the orthodoxy. Zhu Weiguo laughed and said, "Well, it is indeed so. It seems that I should know more about young people." The wrinkles on his face eased a lot. Qin Sheng smiled bitterly and did not continue. After all, the man in front of him, as an elder, was very sincere and did not have those old and stubborn thoughts. Qin Sheng just refuted, and then he seriously looked at Zhu Weiguo. The man in front of him gave people a feeling of righteousness. His eyebrows were thick, his eyes were firm, his face muscles were tight, and there was a strong aura. Qin Sheng asked with interest, "Have you been a soldier?" Zhu Weiguo was not surprised. He had been in the army all his life, and anyone could see that. After all, the temperament of soldiers was different. He nodded and said, "I have been a soldier all my life. I have given my life to the country. I love this country deeply, and I love this land even more." Zhu Weiguo's words made Qin Sheng respect him, and his attitude changed immediately. His biggest regret was that he did not become a soldier. At first, he wanted to enroll in the military school, but his grandfather did not agree. The Lin family also had some opinions. Finally, he went to Fudan University in Shanghai. The word soldier was very important in Qin Sheng's heart. He remembered that someone said that this is not a peaceful era, but we live in a peaceful country. Yes, the reason why we can have such a happy and comfortable life now is because there are people who are carrying the burden for us and moving forward. It is because there are people who are protecting this peace for us. They're the most adorable people, but also the most hardworking people. Therefore, this was why Qin Sheng had a good relationship with Hao Lei, because Hao Lei still had the righteousness of a soldier. Qin Sheng put away his coldness and asked politely, "Do you live here?" Zhu Weiguo shook his head and said, "No, I have a meeting here today, and by the way, I came to see a friend. I happen to see you practicing boxing here. As a soldier, of course I am interested in it." At first, Qin Sheng still had doubts about Zhu Weiguo. It was because the strangers who had appeared around him during this time were not coincidental, but deliberately arranged. Therefore, Qin Sheng was wary of him. Maybe because of Zhu Weiguo's words, or because he was a soldier, Qin Sheng did not think too much and trusted him. Qin Sheng asked curiously, "You are so old, but you are still in active service. Haven't you retired?" Zhu Weiguo laughed and said, "Why, young man, do you look down on us old bones?" Qin Sheng said quickly, "Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I just asked casually. After all, most people at your age have begun to live a life of square dancing with their grandchildren." Zhu Weiguo patted the snow on his shoulder and said, "I am just kidding. I have been in the army all my life, and I have nothing to do when I am old. I will continue to do my job and teach the young people by the way." Qin Sheng admired Zhu Weiguo very much, but he did not intend to continue to disturb him. It was so cold outside. After all, his body could not catch up with a young man like him. So Qin Sheng was ready to leave. Zhu Weiguo took the initiative to say, "Young man, I see that you are a little confused. Is there something on your mind? If it is convenient, you can tell me. Anyway, I have nothing to do now. It is rare to meet such an interesting young man like you." Qin Sheng was stunned. The things that had happened recently had been piling up in his heart. No matter how he vented, he could not feel comfortable. He didn't want to find someone to talk to, but now he was in Beijing and there were no reliable friends around. He hesitated for a while and finally said, "I don't know how to say something, so I will just say a few words. I am indeed a little confused. You can give me some advice." Zhu Weiguo nodded and said, "Go ahead, I am listening." Qin Sheng took a deep breath and said slowly, "I have been relying on my grandfather since I was a child. I always thought that I had no parents. Later, my grandfather passed away, and I drifted around. During this period, I offended many people and experienced many things. It was not until recently that I knew that my father had found me since the year before last. But he didn't recognize me and had been secretly monitoring me. In the beginning, he didn't interfere with my life, but then he suddenly came into my life. I was completely living in his arrangement. Every step of my life was arranged by him, including the friends around me, but I didn't know. During this time, my enemies found me and started to take revenge on me. My friend died protecting me. I fell into deep guilt. He knew all of this, but he still kept it in the dark and didn't acknowledge me. Until a few days ago, I knew all these. I'm a little confused. I don't know how to face him, and I don't know whether he is right or wrong. What should I do?" Qin Ran had already said these things, but from Zhu Weiguo's point of view, he would not give Qin Sheng advice casually. He hoped that Qin Sheng would walk out of this confusion by himself. So he said, "Since you're confused and don't know whether it is right or wrong, and you don't know how to face him, put these things aside first. Then put these things aside for now. Life is not only about these trivial matters. There are many more things to do. What's more, you have a long way to go. Maybe you will understand as you go." Zhu Weiguo's words enlightened Qin Sheng instantly. Right. Why should he stand in the same place and think about right and wrong? He still had many things to do. If he could not figure it out, then he would not do anything for the rest of his life. As they walked and searched, they would experience more and see more. Perhaps they would understand. After a long time, Qin Sheng said excitedly, "You are right. I know what to do. Thank you. It seems that you are very smart. You are worth teaching." Zhu Weiguo laughed. This nephew was not as confused as he thought. Qin Sheng looked at the time. It was time for him to go back, so he said, "It is late. I will not disturb you. I hope you are healthy and everything goes well." "Okay, thank you." Zhu Weiguo smiled gently. Qin Sheng just remembered that he did not know how to address the man in front of him. So he said, "Well, how should I address you?" Chapter 362. Things began to change. When Nangong turned around and was about to go back, she saw Qin Ran standing under a tree not far away, looking at the pair of uncle and nephew by the lake. Qin Ran had come with her uncle yesterday, but her uncle had an important meeting the next day, and it was impossible for him to refuse. So she waited for a day and went back to the company to deal with some work. After all, many things had been delayed during this period. However, she called Qin Sheng yesterday and did not come with her uncle until this morning. "Sister Anne, when did you come?" Nangong asked after walking in. Seeing that Nangong was wearing thin clothes, Qin Ran took off her scarf and handed it to Nangong, saying, "I just arrived not long ago. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? Put this scarf on quickly." Nangong was very touched and did not refuse. She smiled foolishly. It was all Qin Sheng's fault. She was worried that Qin Sheng would run away, so she hurried to catch up with him. Nangong put on the scarf and said sweetly, "Thank you, Sister Ran. You're the best to me." Silly girl. Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She treated Nangong as her biological sister. Even if Qin Sheng came back, she would not favor one and discriminate against the other. After all, Nangong and Qin Sheng's experience was very similar. However, Qin Sheng had found his family, while Nangong would never have such a chance. Qin Ran hesitated for a moment and said, "Yezi, I have a favor to ask of you. Don't tell the old man that Uncle and Qin Sheng met today. I want to let Uncle contact Qin Sheng more. After all, Uncle loved Qin Sheng the most when he was a child. Then I will guide Qin Sheng slowly and solve the conflict between him and the old man." Yezi was Qin Ran's nickname for Nangong, because Nangong's full name was Nangong Yi. This name was given by Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an said that when he saw Nangong for the first time, he felt that she was a bit depressed. Everyone was crying, but she stared at the fallen leaves outside the window in a daze. It seemed that she was a leaf that fell from a tree and then flew with the wind. She would go wherever the wind blew and could never find her way home. Nangong pursed her lips and hesitated. After all, her foster father sent her here. She should report everything to him, or he would definitely punish her. However, Nangong was her sister. Which one should she choose? In the end, Nangong nodded and said yes. "Sister Ran, don't worry. I won't tell my foster father." Silly girl. Qin Ran chuckled as she helped Nangong adjust her scarf. It was still snowing by Yinchi Lake. Zhu Weigua's last sentence instantly killed Qin Sheng. He stood in the snow, not knowing what to do. Once again, God played a joke on Qin Sheng. Originally, he thought that he had just met a passerby in a hurry. He would feel better if he vented his anger and ridiculed him casually. However, he did not expect that the final result would be like this. He turned out to be his uncle. Alas, Qin Sheng was still too young. Originally, he was still on guard, but he did not expect that the other party could gain his trust with just a few words. In the end, there were twists and turns, and he was slapped in the face hard. "Are you my uncle?" Qin Sheng muttered to himself. Zhu Weiguo walked over, patted Qin Sheng's shoulder, and said, "It seems that you have no impression of me, your uncle. I doted on you a lot when you were a child. I would buy you anything delicious or fun. You often hugged my thighs and asked me to buy candied fruits for you. You even wanted to buy candied fruits for your sister. Once I brought him to the office, and he pulled out my gun from somewhere. It gave me a fright." Zhu Weiguo laughed as he spoke. At that time, the sky in Beijing was still very blue, and his sister was in her prime. Everything changed in the autumn of that year. I know that a lot of things have happened during this period, and it is hard for you to accept it. Your sister called me the night before yesterday and told me that she had found you. At that time, I cannot believe it. After all, more than 20 years have passed, and I thought there was no hope. It was not until I sent a car to pick her up and learned everything that I knew that it was true. At night, your aunt and I were so excited that we could not sleep. We kept talking about the things that happened when you were a child. I did not know how to meet you, and I could not find you directly and tell you that I am your uncle. However, I feel that things like kinship and blood ties, even if time elapses, will not diminish in the slightest. If you cannot remember what happened when you were a child, we will help you. If you cannot accept it now, we will wait for you to accept it slowly." Zhu Weiguo looked at Qin Sheng and said with a kind face. This was the last wish of the old master. He was afraid that he would be too ashamed to see the old master after he passed away. He would take Qin Sheng to worship the old master someday, and the old master will be able to rest in peace. Zhu Weiguo's words made Qin Sheng feel a little confused, excited, and moved. He seemed to remember what his uncle looked like when he was young, but it was very vague. At this time, Qin Ran and Nangong came over. Qin Sheng also saw Qin Ran. It seemed that he had found his savior, and he hurriedly said, "Sister." Qin Ran said sincerely, "Qin Sheng, uncle is right. We will wait for you with enough time. We will wait for you to reintegrate into our big family. We have waited for you for more than 20 years, and we do not mind waiting for another 3 or 5 years." His sister had confirmed the identity of the middle-aged man in front of him, so Qin Sheng did not hesitate anymore. He bowed deeply to Zhu Weiguo, and then said respectfully, "Uncle." Zhu Weiguo, the man who was called the Confucian general of the new era by a certain leader, smiled like a child and responded happily, "Yes." The scene of Qin Sheng and his uncle recognizing each other was somewhat touching. It was not as cold as when Qin Sheng and Qin Chang'an met each other, but more warm and affectionate. It was too cold outside. Qin Ran took her uncle and Qin Sheng back to the villa. She had told Anzhao to cook more dishes today. Sitting on the sofa, Qin Ran made a pot of tea for her uncle. It was said that an uncle loved his nephew and niece the most. When they were young, he had been special to them. Of course, there were also the 2 sons of Small Ant. But later, Qin Sheng was taken away by his grandfather. Small Ant's family had always been in the south. Only she, as his niece, was close to him, so her uncle loved her the most. After drinking a cup of tea, Qin Sheng took the initiative to ask, "Uncle, how is Grandma?" On the way back, his mind had begun to change, which was very subtle. It was because he had thought through some things, and also because of his uncle's words, "If you can't accept it now, we will wait for you to accept it slowly." This sentence touched Qin Sheng. Just as his sister said, they had been trying hard to find him all these years. These days, he had been treating himself as a person who had been greatly wronged and abandoned. He did not think that these close relatives had been separated from him for so many years. Didn't they feel sad and tormented in their hearts? Now that they found him, they took him so seriously, almost worshiping him as their ancestor. Why? Why? It was because they cared about him, they felt sorry for him, and they felt that they owed him. But he could not accept it with a clear conscience, could he? This was not the basic principle of being a man. You could not be complacent while others kept giving. Others took 99 steps, you had to take 1. Moreover, everything that happened now was an unquestionable fact. They were all his relatives. They used to love him very much. It was because of fate that they had been separated for so many years. Now, they were finally reunited, and their feelings for him had not weakened at all. The only thing he could do was to take the initiative to integrate with them again. He believed that sooner or later, the feelings of the past would be found again, because family was family. Qin Ran and Zhu Weiguo were both stunned by his seemingly casual words. They were quite surprised that Qin Sheng would take the initiative to ask about these things. Zhu Weiguo hurriedly said, "Your grandmother is in good health, but she often thinks of you. Your grandfather didn't have the chance to see you, and your grandmother is afraid that she won't have the chance either." Qin Sheng felt a little sad. He chuckled and said, "Uncle, don't tell my grandmother that I'm back. When I settle down in Beijing, I will go to Shanghai to see her." "Okay, then I'll listen to you. It's almost a new year. I will go with you and your sister then." Zhu Weiguo nodded happily. But then he said, "But since you're back, don't delay some things anymore. It's been more than 20 years. Your mother should miss you more than anyone else. And your grandfather told us before he passed away that we must find a way to find you. When we find you, we will take you to see him." Zhu Weiguo did not want to mention these things, but these things were indeed unavoidable. So after he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the living room became a little gloomy. No one said anything. They just looked at Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng was the protagonist of this matter. Qin Sheng felt a little suffocated. He thought of the words he had said to his mother in the old house that day. The only thing he could completely accept from the bottom of his heart was his mother. So Qin Sheng gritted his teeth and said, "Uncle, when I adjust my state, I will go to see my mother and grandfather. I don't want them to see me like this." Qin Ran could not help but say, "Brother, you don't have to think so much. No matter what you look like, they won't blame you." Zhu Weiguo respected Qin Sheng, so he said, "Ran, then listen to Qin Sheng. You can go when he thinks it's appropriate. But Qin Sheng, are you going to stay here and continue to escape? Qin Sheng did not hesitate this time. He replied directly, Uncle, don't worry. I'm not that weak. When the snow stops, I will go back. Okay. Zhu Weiguan nodded with satisfaction. Qin Ran added, if you don't want to go back to the Sihiyuan, you can stay with me until you want to go back. Qin Sheng did not say anything, but he accepted this suggestion. At this time, Aunt Zhao came over and told them that lunch was ready. They moved to the dining room. After sitting down, Zhu Weigua asked, can you drink? Qin Sheng nodded and said, yes. Then drink with me. I have been looking forward to this day for more than 20 years. Zhu Weigua laughed and said, Ran, bring the wine. If there is no wine here, I remember there are 2 bottles in the trunk. Ask Xiao Gao to bring them in. Chapter 363. Chapter 362, Don't Worry. Asking for monthly votes. Since her mother passed away and her brother was separated, Qin Ran felt that the Qin family was not like a home anymore. She admitted that her father loved her from the bottom of his heart, but his way of expressing his love was different from other fathers. However, her father had been focusing on his career these years. Therefore, every time she went back to the Sihiyuan, the house was very lonely and she was the only one there. Therefore, she hated going back more and more, and finally moved out to live alone. Because of this, Qin Ran preferred to hang out with her grandmother and uncle. There was a time when she felt very lonely, and she had been living with her grandparents for half a year. Her uncle would come home for dinner every week, unless he was too busy. Her small aunt also came once a month. Together with other relatives and friends, Qin Ran felt that it was like a home. She had thought that when Qin Sheng came back, the Qin family would feel like a home, but she did not expect that the relationship between Qin Sheng and Qin Chang'an would be so bad. Qin Sheng lacked the warmth of a family since he was a child, and Qin Ran was afraid that he would be disheartened. Fortunately, her grandmother and uncle could make him feel the warmth of a big family. For example, at this moment, this feeling was very good. Zhu Weigua and Qin Sheng drank and chatted to their heart's content. Fortunately, it was the weekend where he would not be able to drink. Qin Ran and Nangong were in charge of pouring wine and taking food. Nangong was very reluctant to serve Qin Sheng, but he had no choice. They were talking about the interesting things when Qin Sheng was a child, intentionally or unintentionally helping Qin Sheng to find the memory of that year. After all, it had been too long, and Qin Sheng was too young at that time, so he could not remember much. But at least Qin Sheng did remember his uncle, Zhu Weigua, because Tang Helu was his favorite when he was a child. His mother did not allow them to eat sweets, and only his uncle dared to buy it for them secretly. After lunch, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran walked Zhu Weigua out of the villa. They did not drink much, only a bottle of white wine, which was not a big deal for their drinking capacity. Good boy, your drinking capacity is not bad. I can't accompany you anymore, but after a period of time, when the Zhu family gathers, I will let your generation drink with you. Zhu Weigua was rarely so happy. During this time, the army had a strict ban on drinking, and he was in a high position, of course, he had to set an example. But today was the weekend, and it was such a happy event, he had to drink a few. Qin Ran muttered, Uncle, are you asking eldest cousin to avenge you? Zhu Weigua laughed and said, What are you talking about? Do you think I'm so evil? All right, that's enough. You can all go back. If there's anything, remember to call me. After that, Zhu Weigua waved at the crowd and quickly walked into the car. He rolled down the window and waved at the crowd again. The crowd didn't look away until the 2 cars disappeared from their sight. Uncle is the backbone of our big family. Qin Ran couldn't help sighing. Qin Sheng did not say anything. When he first met Zhu Weigua and did not know that he was his uncle, Qin Sheng felt that Zhu Weigua was definitely a big shot in a high position. It was the first time that he had met a man with such a strong aura that made him breathless. Even Qin Chang'an did not have such a strong feeling. At this moment, after seeing the 2 cars with military plates, Qin Sheng was even more certain of his guess. He was quite familiar with the political rules of the country, especially the license plates of the military. There were many connections behind them. The military plates of his uncle's 2 cars should be of the highest level in the military, so it was not difficult to guess his uncle's identity. The 3 of them went back to the living room. Qin Ran made a pot of tea again and said to Qin Sheng, "Grandma has 3 children. Uncle is the eldest, our mother is the second eldest, and our aunt is in Shanghai. Uncle had always doted on his 2 younger sisters, Mom and Auntie, since they were young. So when they grew up, he loved us as well. Our aunt married in the south and didn't come to Beijing often. So Uncle and our mother were very close. When we were young, no matter what we wanted, Uncle would try his best to satisfy us." Qin Sheng nodded and said, "Sister, I can feel Uncle's feelings for us. Well, it's good that you know. When you reintegrate into our big family, you will know how many people are waiting for you to come back and how many people love you silently," Qin Ran said sincerely. The little things that happened these days had made Qin Sheng feel a different kind of warmth, which he had been missing for more than 20 years. Naturally, he also understood a lot of things. So Qin Sheng felt a little sad and said, "Sister, I know." Qin Ran didn't want to talk about such a sad topic. She didn't want to give Qin Sheng any pressure. She asked casually, "Are you used to living here? How are you feeling these days?" Qin Sheng deliberately joked, "It's good here, whether it's the environment or the air. It's just that there's a tigress around, which makes me a little worried." Hearing this, Nangong was furious in an instant. However, Qin Ran was right beside her. She did not have the guts to beat Qin Sheng in front of his biological sister. She could only point at Qin Sheng and say angrily, it was rare to see someone humiliate Nangong. Qin Ran smiled bitterly and said, "What happened to you these days?" "Nothing, just playing and joking," Qin Sheng said happily. Because of the lunch, he was in a much better mood. Qin Ran covered her mouth and smiled. "It seems that your relationship is going well." "Who has a relationship with him?" Nangong said angrily. Qin Ran quickly mediated. Okay. We are family from now on. We should take care of each other. Qin Sheng, you're older than Yezi. As a brother, you should give in to your sister. Don't bully Yezi." "Yezi? Oh." It was the first time for Qin Sheng to hear Nangong's name. Was it Nangongyi? This name was not bad. He said half-jokingly, "Then call me brother first. Believe it or not, I will beat you." Nangong was more and more angry. Qin Sheng wanted to continue to tease Nangong, but was stopped by Qin Ran. She smiled and said, "Okay, stop playing. Qin Sheng, I want to talk to you about something serious." Qin Sheng put away his playfulness and looked at Qin Ran seriously. "Sister, you say it. Now that you have returned to Beijing, do you have any specific plans? For example, what do you want to do?" Qin Ran asked tentatively. Of course, Qin Chang'an hoped that Qin Sheng would enter the company and start to inherit his business step by step. But Qin Ran wanted to know Qin Sheng's intention. Qin Sheng didn't avoid it anymore. He said seriously, "Sister, I want to tell you that I plan to meditate for a few months and think about my life. After I figure out a lot of things, I will make a decision. During this period, I can learn something to enrich myself. So when I go back in 2 days, I want to live in Hadian. Isn't there a university there? I can go back to the campus life." Since Qin Sheng had said so, Qin Ran didn't make things difficult for him. She also thought that some things could not be rushed. Even if she asked Qin Sheng to take over the family business now, he might not agree. So Qin Ran said, "Okay, then I will listen to you. You don't need to worry about these things. I will arrange it for you when I go back." "Okay." Qin Sheng nodded silently. This was the decision he made after careful consideration. Since he graduated from university, he had never studied systematically again. Except for the habit of persevering and reading books, he had always been living off what he had earned. Some things made him feel powerless, especially when he was in Hangzhou, without the help of Ms. In and the others. He was afraid that he would not be able to bear the responsibility. So during this period, he was not in a hurry to do anything. First, so many things had happened, he needed time to digest and accept. Second, he had not sorted out the contradiction in relationship with Qin Chang'an. Third, he needed to figure out the background of the Qin family and the Zhu family so that he could reposition himself. Therefore, He could take advantage of this time to learn something. The best universities in China were all in Beijing. Of course, he would take advantage of such time and opportunity. After talking about these things, Qin Ran joked, "Do you need me to continue to accompany you here?" Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Sister, I'm not a 3-year-old child. I won't do anything out of line. You don't need to accompany me. You must have a lot of things to do." "Okay, then I will go back in a while. During this period, I have missed a lot of work. I will let Nangong accompany you here." That was exactly what Qin Ran meant. Nangong muttered a few words in a low voice. She was not here to accompany Qin Sheng, but to monitor him. After chatting with Qin Sheng for a while, Qin Ran drove back to the downtown area. That day, Zhu Wei was sent a driver to pick her up, so her car was parked in the housing estate these 2 days. After it snowed intermittently for 3 days, the snow finally stopped. It seemed that it was only snowing in the mountains, and it was only cloudy in the downtown area these 2 days. These 2 days, Qin Sheng and Nangong did not have any contradiction. They were busy with their own things and did not disturb each other. Qin Sheng read, jogged, and exercised every day, while Nangong stayed in the living room and watched dramas. She only followed Qin Sheng when he went out. It was not cold when it snowed, but when the snow melted, it would be very cold in the mountains in the following days. Therefore, Qin Sheng did not intend to continue to stay at Yinchi Lake. The night before, he had called his sister and said that he would go back to the downtown area the next morning. Qin Ran had intended to pick Qin Sheng up, but was politely refused by Qin Sheng. In the end, Qin Ran had to send Qin Sheng her location and let Nangong send Qin Sheng there. Aunt Zhao stayed in the villa to pack things. She would send someone to send them to Qin Sheng later. As for Qin Sheng's matter, Qin Ran called Qin Sheng on after that day. After all, she could not make a decision on her own. She had to care about her father's feelings, so she discussed it with her father. Qin Chang'an still did not have any opinion on it. He could do whatever Qin Sheng wanted to do. He gave Qin Sheng enough time to buffer. He had persisted for so many years, so he did not care about a few months. Others all thought that Qin Chang'an's family was rich and had a lot of connections. It seemed that he was very popular and everyone was in awe of him. However, Qin Chang'an himself felt that sometimes he was just a pitiful loner. Therefore, Gongsun was the only one who really understood him. Chapter 364. The Rich Qin Ran. The second update is here, asking for monthly votes and support. If Qin Sheng was willing to take the initiative to understand his father's life, he would know how difficult his father's life was. Maybe most people would not have such a life. Qin Sheng was raised by his mother. The man he called father was elusive. Sometimes he would stay at home for half a year, and sometimes he could only see him a few times a year. When he was young, his mother passed away, which was the first big setback in his life. Since then, he and his brother depended on each other and were fostered in a friend's home. They were no different from orphans. When he was 30, he experienced the biggest change in his life. His wife passed away, his son was taken away by his father, and his brother became a monk, leaving only his daughter to depend on. His life almost collapsed. His only daughter was not close to him and had been complaining about him for so many years. In fact, he was like a lonely man. When he was old, his father passed away without informing him. He was not even qualified to see him off. He finally found his long-lost son, but because of some things, he had conflicts with his son. As for the so-called setbacks and sufferings in these years, they were nothing to Qin Chang'an. From an ordinary person to where he was today, if he did not experience ups and downs, it would be too easy to succeed. There were successful people everywhere in this society, not more ordinary people. Qin Ran borrowed a house from a friend in Longhu Tongning 1, Zhongguancun East Road, Haidian District. It was just a 5-minute walk to the south of Tsinghua University. It was also very close to Peking University. After all, these two universities were next to each other. When Nangong and Qin Sheng arrived, Qin Ran was already waiting in a house. This was a 3-bedroom, luxuriously decorated house. After all, the price of this community was not low. When it was first opened, it was sold out. After all, The surrounding area was full of universities. On the way, Qin Sheng and Nangong quarreled a lot. This was also Qin Sheng's only way of entertainment at present. However, he was afraid that one day he would offend Nangong. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable. After Qin Sheng and Nangong came in, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng around and asked, "How is it?" Actually, Qin Sheng did not have any requirements for accommodation. He had lived in all kinds of places over the years. He had even slept on the streets. As long as he had a warm place, he would be fine. "It's pretty good. I like this study," Qin Sheng said with a smile. The study was very beautiful. The whole wall was made of cherry wood, and there was a huge globe next to it. However, there were no books on the shelf, so it lacked the scent of books. Qin Ran chuckled and said, "I've already bought all the necessities for you. Everything is new. Aunt Zhao will come over to take care of you. She will cook and clean for you every day." Qin Sheng wanted to live on his own. He had been used to being alone all these years. He really did not want others to take care of him. Meals could be taken care of outside. If he was in a good mood, he could do it himself. As for cleaning and washing clothes, he could do it himself. Consequently, Qin Sheng rejected her politely as he said, "Sister, you don't have to bother Auntie Zhao. I want to live alone. I can handle these things." "Really?" Qin Ran did not insist. She was willing to respect any of his opinions. Qin Sheng hugged Qin Ran's shoulders and said, "Really? I know you're worried about me. If you are worried, you can come and see me every few days." "Okay, I'll listen to you," Qin Ran said happily. It seemed that her brother was used to being independent. However, this was a good sign. One had to take care of himself first in order to be able to take care of others. After chatting with Qin Ran, Qin Sheng said to Nangong beside him, "Do you still want to keep watching me? There are so many people in the university. You are so beautiful. There should be many college students who are willing to talk to you. I'm afraid that you won't have time to take care of me then." Nangong snorted and said, "You don't have to worry about this." Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. Qin Sheng and Nangong were really enemies. In the past, no one dared to quarrel with Nangong. Otherwise, they would have been beaten by Nangong. After all, few ordinary men could beat Nangong. At this time, Qin Ran took out a business card from her bag and handed it to Qin Sheng. She said, "By the way, about your study, Tsinghua University's School of Economics and Management happened to have a 3-month study class. I used my connections to sign you up. The class will officially start tomorrow. The lecturers are all senior professors of the School of Economics and Management and the consultants of the School of Economics and Management Advisory Committee. You should know that the consultants of the School of Economics and Management are all domestic and foreign business tycoons, as well as high-level ministers and retired old leaders." Qin Sheng was surprised. Originally, he just wanted to go to the class casually. He did not expect that Qin Ran would sign him up for such a powerful class. Tsinghua University's School of Economics and Management was the top school in the country. These years, it had been fighting with Guanghua School of Management of Beijing University openly and secretly. However, in recent years, it had shone brightly, especially the School of Economics and Management Advisory Committee. The list of names was enough to beat any institution. The honorary chairman of the advisory committee was Qin Sheng's idol. This class should not be simple. The number of places must be limited. One cannot get into it, even if he had money. The class would officially start tomorrow. The registration should have already ended. However, he could catch the last bus. Presumably, it was not only his sister's idea. There must be Qin Chang'an's manipulation behind the scenes. Qin Sheng's guess was right. After Qin Ran told Qin Chang'an about this, Qin Chang'an inquired about this matter of the School of Economics and Management. Not to mention his relationship with the School of Economics and Management, many of the consultants and tycoons in the School of Economics and Management were his friends and distinguished guests. Consequently, this matter was not difficult for him. It was a good thing that Qin Sheng wanted to study. However, Qin Chang'an would not let him waste his time blindly. This class was just right for him. Basically, the students in the class were the children of rich and powerful families who had already taken over the class. It was just right for Qin Sheng to gradually get in touch with this circle. Qin Sheng was stunned and did not know what to say. He was a philosophy major. As for the aspect of economics and management, he was good at economics and finance. After all, he had attended a lot of classes at that time. However, he had only read a few books on management. Don't think so much. The curriculum is not that tight. There are only 4 classes a week. You can manage the rest of the time. As for the homework, you can ask me if you don't understand it. Your sister graduated from Tsinghua University with a master's degree in economics and management, Qin Ran said confidently. That was why Qin Chang'an had such a good relationship with the School of Economics and Management. It was because he had donated a lot to the School of Economics and Management. Since Qin Ran had arranged it in this way, even though he knew that it might be Qin Chang'an's manipulation, Qin Sheng had no way to refuse. After all, such an opportunity was not available to everyone. The teachers here were definitely the best in the country. They could understand the political and economic structure of the top level of China. Qin Sheng nodded and agreed as he said, "Okay, I will listen to you." Qin Ran finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fearing that Qin Sheng would refuse, she handed the business card to Qin Sheng and said, "This is a director of the School of Economics and Management. I won't send you there tomorrow. You can contact him directly." Qin Sheng said thoughtfully, "Well, okay." Qin Ran patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, "Okay, let's not talk about this. I will take you to dinner and buy you some clothes and daily necessities." Qin Ran took Qin Sheng out. This time, Nangong did not follow them. She left in advance. She still wanted to ask Uncle Gong's son what she should do next. Qin Ran knew this place very well. After all, she had stayed in Tsinghua University for 6 years. She knew clearly where the delicious restaurants were. After that, she took Qin Sheng to have a haircut. His hair was too long. He needed a new hairstyle to welcome a new life. Finally, she took Qin Sheng to the shopping center and bought several sets of clothes for him, including 4 sets of different styles that he usually wore, 3 sets of more formal ones, and other matching things. The whole trunk was filled by Qin Ran. Qin Sheng was most afraid of shopping. However, this was his sister's kind intention. He could not refuse. Thinking about it, the clothes that his sister bought for him during this period were more than all the clothes he had bought in the past 2 years. When they came back after dinner, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. It could be seen how long they had been shopping today. Qin Ran handed 2 bank cards to Qin Sheng and said, "One is a CITIC savings card. The money in it is enough for you to buy anything. The other is a Centurion Black Gold card of China Merchants Bank. I forgot the limit. The password is the last 6 digits of your mobile phone number." Qin Sheng was shocked. He knew about the Centurion Black Gold card of China Merchants Bank. It was a top credit card. It was said that it had an unlimited limit. The lowest limit was millions. This was the first time that Qin Sheng had seen it. As for the CITIC savings card, there must be a lot of money in it. Qin Sheng had seen the world since he was a child. However, it was the first time that he had come into contact with so much money. So he said uneasily, "Sister, I have money. It's enough. Don't refuse. These are all given to you by the old man. Our family is not short of money. If you don't spend it, I won't spend it. Do you want others to spend it?" Qin Ran said generously. This amount of money was really nothing to the Qin family. Not to mention the old man's assets. Her own savings were enough to buy anything she wanted. Qin Sheng took it in the end. However, he thought that he would not need it. Qin Ran then handed Qin Sheng a car key and said, "This is a Mercedes-Benz GLS. You can use it first. If you don't like this car, you can buy whatever you want. As for the license plate, you don't have to worry about it. Just let me know." Qin Ran's expression at the moment said, "Our family is rich. As long as it can be done with money, it is not a problem for our family. Even if you want to buy an ordinary listed company, it is not a problem for our family." Qin Sheng had never been poor since he was a child. When he was a child in Beijing, everything was the best. Later, he went to Xi'an. The Lin family was also rich in Xi'an. As for these 2 years, needless to say, although they did not have a lot of money, they had never been short of money. During the 2 years of traveling, their life was more difficult. However, that was also the most interesting time. However, it was the first time for Qin Sheng to experience such a situation. It was also the first time for him to have so much money, which made him a little overwhelmed. However, he knew that this was just the beginning. Based on his current understanding of the Qin family, the wealth they had was beyond his imagination. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "As long as the car can be driven, it's fine. I don't have any requirements." Qin Ran said softly, "Well, I know that you don't have any requirements and you don't care about these things, but I do. You should have enjoyed the best life like me. However, you have suffered for so many years and suffered for so many years. So you deserve these." Qin Sheng did not say anything else. Otherwise, he would make his sister unhappy. So he held Qin Ran's hand and said, "Okay, I will listen to you. I will be a rich playboy from now on. I will kill whoever I don't like with money." Qin Ran covered her mouth and smiled sweetly as she said, "Are you angry with me?" Qin Sheng laughed out loud. He had never thought that he would have a sister who loved him so much. It seemed that he did not need to worry about anything in the future. It was getting late. Qin Sheng had to familiarize himself with the environment the next day. Qin Ran reminded Qin Sheng a few more words and left directly. After Qin Ran left, Qin Sheng looked at the 2 cards and the car key on the table thoughtfully. His life had been completely different. However, Qin Sheng could not lose himself because of these things. In that case, he would not be himself. Chapter 365. A strange opening remark. Today's chapter was about classmates getting married. After all, it was the holidays and everyone was getting married. Qin Sheng had lived in the Lin family since he was a child. He had seen many so-called rich people with Uncle Lin and understood their lives. The lives of the local tycoons with different identities and routes were also different. Even the upstarts in northern Shaanxi who became rich by coal mines had a very different attitude towards life. Most of them were poor beyond imagination. Some people still insisted on living a frugal and simple life after they became rich, while most people became completely unscrupulous after they became rich. Qin Sheng used to imagine what kind of life he would live after he became famous. He thought that he would still be low-key. After all, he was not a high-profile person. Moreover, as he moved forward step by step, his state of mind would gradually sink. However, Qin Sheng never thought that one day his life would suddenly become like this. From a loser to a super-rich second generation, there was a huge difference in an instant. Qin Sheng suddenly felt a little afraid that he would lose himself and forget his most real self. Therefore, Qin Sheng had to take advantage of this period of time to settle his state of mind. Only by laying a solid foundation could the future go smoothly. 3 months of study time, plus the holidays and the spring festival in the middle, it was estimated that the study class would end in April next year. Qin Sheng subconsciously walked into the study. He was not used to the bare bookshelf. After all, he was a person who liked to deal with books. Therefore, he would go to the bookstore tomorrow. In the morning, Qin Sheng got up very early. Last night, he smoked quietly in the study, took a bath, and went to sleep. He did not have the habit of recognizing his bed, so he fell asleep very quickly. The ingredients in the kitchen were all prepared by Qin Ran. The refrigerator was filled with all kinds of food. Qin Sheng made some breakfast casually: eggs, fruits, milk, and bread. After breakfast, Qin Sheng went out to report to the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. He did not drive the GLS. After all, it was so close. He could walk there and familiarize himself with the surrounding environment and feel the atmosphere of Tsinghua University. The city was very cold after the heavy snow. The northwest wind was like a knife scratching his face. However, Qin Sheng was dressed very warmly, wrapped in a new down jacket he bought yesterday, wearing a hat and a scarf, as if living in the Arctic. On the way from Longhutangning 1 to Tsinghua University, one could see many students chatting and laughing in groups of 2s and 3s. After all, the top talents of China were gathered here. Qin Sheng was more interested in Wadayaku, which was not far away. After all, it was known as Wadayaku, the center of the universe. If there was a chance, he could go to Tsinghua University's Wadayaku School of Finance. He had heard from Lao Air that he had studied there before. Although Qin Sheng had never been to Tsinghua University, He was not a stranger to it. After all, this university was too famous and had too many stories and legends. However, it was a bit too big. Qin somewhat regretted that he did not drive. He had been walking for at least half an hour, but he had not found a school of economics and management yet. No wonder his sister would leave a car for him. Since he got up early, Qin walked slowly. He took the opportunity to feel the cultural atmosphere of this century-old institution and to find the feeling of campus life when he was in Fudan University. In the blink of an eye, 4 or 5 years had passed. It was as if nothing had happened last night. The architecture of Tsinghua University was very distinctive. After all, the architecture department of this university was well known both at home and abroad. Of course, the environment was excellent. There were flowers, trees, and greenery everywhere. Walking along this main road, Qin could see the magnificent central main building of Tsinghua University from afar. However, he preferred to observe the students he met on the way. He remembered that in the movie German Empire, Bismarck, the Prime Minister of Iron and Blood, had said that the glory of the empire today had been decided on the desks 100 years ago. Qin firmly believed this sentence. For example, the investment in education in Japan after the Meiji Restoration, the educational environment in the United States over the past hundreds of years, and so on. It seemed that countries that had always been able to become world powers had invested a lot in education. Because in this era, talents determined everything. With talents, a country could develop in all aspects, especially in heavy industry and high technology, which are the foundation for a country to gradually become strong. Therefore, these geniuses in front of him were the backbone of the future republic. Whether this nation could stand proudly on the top of the world again depended on their future efforts. The official class started at 10 o'clock, so Qin rushed to the School of Economics and Management at 9 o'clock. At this time, the students had already started their classes. Qin took out his business card and dialed the number of the deputy director. After the phone was connected, he introduced himself. The deputy director politely asked Qin to wait downstairs, and he would come down to pick him up immediately. After waiting for a few minutes, a man wearing glasses and a down jacket came down. The man seemed to be in his 30s. It was already amazing that he could be the deputy director of Tsinghua University at this age. "Hello, are you Qin? I'm Fang Huawei. Junior sister Xiao Ran has already told me about you," the man said very politely. Qin also responded with a smile. "Hello, Director Fang." Fang Huawei also graduated from the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. However, after graduating with a master's degree, he stayed in school. His family more or less had some connections in the education system, so he went step by step until today. Qin Ran could be considered as his junior sister. His father-in-law was a famous economist and also a senior professor in the School of Economics and Management. When Qin Ran was a postgraduate, her mentor was his father-in-law, so they had more contact. Fang Huawei more or less knew something about the Qin family, especially Qin Ran's father, who was a VIP of Tsinghua University. In recent years, he had donated a lot to Tsinghua University and had more cooperation with the School of Economics and Management. Many big shots of the School of Economics and Management later went to the company under the Qin family. However, he was not clear about the relationship between Qin Ran, and the Qin family. But since they had the same surname, he must be a member of the Qin family. Otherwise, the dean would not have personally added a place at the last moment for such an important class. Only Qin Ran's father could have such a big face. Fang Huawei went straight to the point and said, "You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Brother Fang. I have a good relationship with junior sister Xiao Ran. Her supervisor when she was a postgraduate student was my father-in-law. He was very willing to keep in touch with the Qin family, so he directly pointed out their relationship, which could also make him and Qin closer." Qin smiled slightly and said, "Okay, then I will call you Brother Fang. Let's go. I will take you to go through the formalities first. We will talk about other things on the way," Fang Huawei said happily. Qin replied, "Thank you, Brother Fang." Therefore, Fang Huawei took Qin into the main building of the School of Economics and Management. First, They went to the office in charge of the class to go through the registration formalities. On the way, they had a good chat. Qin Sheng did not care about his relationship with Qin Ran. He directly said that Qin Ran was his sister. Feng Huawei thought that she was his cousin because he knew that Qin Sheng had no younger brother, and his father only had this only daughter. If he were the same age as Qin Ran, he would definitely pursue Qin Ran without hesitation. After all, if he married into the Qin family, he would directly stand at the peak of his life. Almost everyone finished the formalities yesterday and came directly to the class today. Qin Sheng was the last one. The formalities were not complicated. It was very simple. It did not take long to finish. Feng Huawei followed Qin Sheng to their classroom. At the door of the classroom, Feng Huawei stopped and said, "The classroom is right here. I won't go in. Your classmates should have already arrived. The person in charge of your class is the deputy dean of the college. But if there's anything, you can call me directly." Feng Huawei said, "Thank you, Brother Feng," Qin Sheng said politely. Then he asked, "Brother Feng, do you have time at noon? I want to treat you to lunch. Firstly, I thank you. Secondly, I have something to ask you." Of course, Feng Huawei would not miss such an opportunity. However, he had to be reserved as a cultured person. He could not appear to curry favor with people in power. So he hesitated for a while and said, "Well, I have a meeting later. I don't know when it will end, but you just started the class this morning. You should only get to know each other and then learn about the curriculum, teachers, and so on. You can send me a message when you finish, and then we will make an appointment." "Okay, then I will listen to you," Qin Sheng said casually. Feng Huawei nodded and left with a smile. Qin Sheng pushed the door and walked into the classroom. This classroom was not the kind of ordinary undergraduate classroom. Instead, it was like a circular auditorium with a staircase. The seats were distributed around the lecture hall in the middle. The wall directly opposite was a whole black list. There were projectors hanging on the left and right sides. It was a very academic atmosphere. At this time, the classroom was already full of people. Everyone was getting to know each other. After all, on the one hand, they came here to study. On the other hand, making connections was another. Nowadays, all the business schools in China were like this. The famous ones, such as the Zhongou Business School and the Chongjiang Business School, had a very strong student association. In front of each seat, there was a nameplate with a different name. Qin Sheng randomly looked for the seat that belonged to him. Finally, he found it on the side. He took his things and walked over. On the way, the students he met all greeted him politely. Qin Sheng just smiled and nodded in response. He did not stop to chat with them. When he sat down, he was about to observe these students who would stay with him for 3 to 4 months. After all, they were all children of rich and powerful families. At this time, a guy sitting next to him took the initiative to say hello. "Hey, buddy, who gave you this name? I thought it was Qin Sheng from Shanghai Shenhua. If it was really that guy, I must beat him up. He made me lose a lot of money." Chapter 366. I know you. This was the first time Qin Sheng had heard someone trying to get close to him like this. Wasn't he afraid of being beaten up when he went out like this? He looked at the guy in front of him and finally understood why he was such a weirdo. This guy was the weirdo in the entire classroom. On the way just now, Feng Huawei had already told Qin Sheng about this advanced course in detail. It was not a traditional EMBA gold-plated class. Otherwise, what was the difference between it and the business schools that were flooding everywhere nowadays? It could be seen from the lecturers this time that they were all top-notch in Tsinghua University. They had even invited many members of the advisory board, including domestic and foreign business tycoons and senior officials of ministries and commissions. First of all, the process was not free registration. Instead, it was an invitation system. Those who could be selected were not ordinary people. At the very least, their parents' generation was a leading figure in their respective industries and provinces. Secondly, they were all young people, no more than 35 years old. Their goal was to cultivate future business leaders for China. Therefore, when the class started today, almost everyone was dressed very formally. Even after Qin Sheng took off his down jacket, he was wearing a more exquisite suit underneath. But the guy next to him was completely different. Not to mention the fact that his hair was gray and he had earrings. Just the gaudy clothes alone were enough to attract attention. The loose hip-hop jacket, cap and gold chain, t-shirt with a big skull embroidered on the chest, baggy jeans, and Jordan sneakers. No wonder the others only knew each other in twos and threes. Nobody paid any attention to this guy who was sitting here, which made him look awkward. He probably did not know the others. It was not until Qin Sheng, who was sitting next to him, came over that he took the initiative to greet him. Ha ha ha, bro, you're really humorous. The man in hip-hop clothes patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and laughed out loud. However, the strength of the pat was a bit too much. If Qin Sheng had not practiced before, he would probably be choked. Qin Sheng was speechless as he said, I think it's a miracle that you can live until now. The hip-hop guy was quite good-looking, but he had a beard that didn't match his age. He looked a little cynical, and his eyes were filled with contempt. It seemed that he was ashamed to be associated with the other students. You don't say. I've always been in fights since I was young. If I can solve things with my hands, I won't compete. Men should be so tough. If you're not satisfied, then go for it. Fortunately, I have an awesome father. Otherwise, I would not be able to live until now. The man in hip-hop clothes did not care about Qin Sheng's sarcasm and replied straightforwardly. He almost lit up a cigarette and said silently, You don't understand my world. Then, he would sing a rap song. Qin Sheng did not care about him. Although he studied philosophy and was used to figure out the spiritual world of others, he couldn't even take care of himself recently. Had no time to care about others. Moreover, none of the people he had met recently was a coincidence. He was really afraid that Qin Chang'an had arranged this buddy to meet again. Qin Sheng packed up his things and took out the handbook that Feng Huawei had given him. There were detailed schedules, teachers, and other extracurricular activities in the handbook. Compared with the hip-hop man, he was more interested in these. After all, he really wanted to learn something. Unlike the others, who either had strength or experience, he had to do more homework than others. Qin Sheng did not pay attention to this guy, but this guy was cheeky enough to approach him and said, Bro, my name is Han Su. I'm from Tianjin. How do I address you? 5-inch you. You. I said you. I got something. You. 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 Look at the others. All of them are so sanctimonious. They're really not interesting at all. When Qin Sheng heard this guy's name, he almost burst out laughing. Han Su was really not reserved at all. He replied casually, Qin Sheng, from Xian. Han Su said to himself, People from the Northwest are forthright and loyal. I also like Xian. It's a famous historical and cultural city where the Zhou, Qin, Han, and Tang dynasties were flourishing. But I haven't been there yet. If I have a chance in the future, I will definitely go there. Don't think I'm bothering you then. Oh, Qin Sheng replied and continued to read the manual. Qin Sheng was not interested, and Han Su did not care. Anyway, he was just killing time. Thinking that he had to study here for 4 months, he felt a little aggrieved. If it were not for the sake of buying the Aston Maydeen, which was worth tens of millions, he would not come here to study, even if he was beaten to death. Qin Sheng, did you take the initiative to come, or were you forced by your family? I was forced. My father said that if I didn't come, he would directly cut off my financial support. These old men, what era are we in? They still insist that we inherit the so-called career. Nowadays, there are so many talents in the society. We just need to find a capable professional manager. As long as we firmly control the equity in our hands, if they can't do it well, we can continue to replace them. Han Su began to talk about his principles, regardless of whether Qin Sheng listened to him or not. Originally, Qin Sheng did not want to pay attention to him, but he still could not help but reply, It's not easy for your father's generation. You will know in the future. Han Su continued to mutter, You don't have to talk about these principles to me. I like to enjoy life and pursue freedom. My father has been strange recently. In the past, he didn't care about me at all. In one sentence, as long as I don't make trouble, I can do whatever I want. This month, he suddenly changed his attitude. He insisted that I enter the company to study and then asked me to come to this class. I'm puzzled. Qin Sheng really didn't want to pay attention to him. Fortunately, at this time, the side door next to the podium opened. A very elegant and spirited man walked in from outside. The man was not a gray-haired old man. On the contrary, he looked very young, less than 40 years old. He wore glasses, was not tall, had a smile on his face, and walked steadily. Behind him were two young people, a man and a woman. Just now, Qin Sheng had already seen the information about this man from the handbook. He was the deputy dean of the School of Economics and Management and also the head teacher of this advanced study class. He became the deputy dean of the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University before 40 years old. Apart from being awesome, he was also awesome. As for his resume, he was an existence worthy of worship. After seeing this man come in, everyone immediately quieted down and returned to their own seats, seriously waiting for the head teacher to speak. The opening ceremony was very simple. There were no complicated procedures, no leader's speech, and so on. After a brief self-introduction, Dean Su introduced some specific matters of this advanced study class in detail. The group of geniuses below all put away their usual arrogance and listened attentively. Only Han Su, who was next to Qin Sheng, looked bored. He directly took out his mobile phone and began to play Honor of Kings. Qin Sheng really admired this guy. Many people could not step into the door of this classroom, even if they racked their brains. However, he came in so easily, but did not cherish such an opportunity at all. This kind of person was really a playboy. After Dean Su finished speaking, everyone applauded. Then Dean Su began to arrange for everyone to introduce themselves, which could be regarded as students getting to know each other and getting along better in the future. Including Qin Sheng, there were a total of 31 students in this class, 12 of whom were female. The ratio of male to female was very harmonious, and there were many beauties. Most of these students had already worked in family businesses, and a small number of them had started their own businesses. Relying on their background and resources, they had also made some achievements. Therefore, when everyone introduced themselves, they basically said their name, age, where they were from, what company they were currently working in, what position they held, and what interests they had. Some people would also say about their character and so on. Qin Sheng listened very carefully. It seemed to be a simple self-introduction, but there was a complicated world behind everyone. At the same time, he also observed the details of these students and found that they all had one thing in common. That was, they had a kind of confidence from the inside out. This was the difference between the children of rich and powerful families and ordinary people. This kind of confidence was not innate, but gradually trained in the acquired family and educational environment. Most ordinary people were quite self-abased. One by one, they introduced themselves. It did not take long for the last two to come. They were Qin Sheng and Han Su. Han Su was playing the game in full swing. Qin Sheng did not notice that this guy was still playing the game. He had to quickly stand up and take the lead to speak. At the same time, he kicked this guy with his foot. Qin Sheng, from Shin. Qin Sheng said very simply. Then he sat down because he really had nothing to introduce, and he was not as excellent as the others. Everyone stared at Qin Sheng with different expressions. Some people were curious, some felt that Qin Sheng was different, and some thought that Qin Sheng was deliberately attracting attention. They sneered at him. After Qin Sheng sat down, Han Su stood up immediately and said, "My name is Han Su from Tianjin. I am 18 years old every year." After that, Han Su also sat down without any nonsense. All the people present burst into laughter. Everyone's attention from Qin Sheng was instantly shifted to Han Su. Compared with Qin Sheng, Han Su was more eye-catching. After all, this guy wore a hip-hop concert outfit and came to attend the advanced study class. Dean Su, who was on the podium, did not know whether to laugh or cry. It did not occur to him that he would meet two students who were so different. However, he was not angry about it. He helped to solve the problem. Since everyone has known each other, then I will continue. As Dean Su spoke, everyone's attention was finally drawn back. Only a few people were still looking at Qin Sheng and Han Su. After Han Su sat down, he muttered in a low voice, "Buddy, thank you. I will treat you to a meal later." Qin Sheng did not agree. After all, he had made an appointment with Feng Huawei to have lunch at noon. He wanted Feng Huawei to help him find the curriculum of the major that he was interested in, as well as some professors' lectures and so on. He thought that Feng Huawei would not refuse such a small thing. Dean Su spoke for another half an hour. Before 12 o'clock, he announced the end of the opening ceremony. The first class would start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This famous economist, who was also an old professor of Tsinghua University, would give a lecture on economics. Qin Sheng put away his things and went out directly. Han Su chased after him and shouted, "Qin Sheng, let's go for lunch. What do you want to eat? It's my treat." Qin Sheng refused euphemistically. "I have something else to do." Han Su muttered, "Buddy, give me some face. You helped me just now. It's natural for me to treat you to a meal. I, Lao Han, never owe others a favor." Qin Sheng said directly, "If you really want to treat me, let's make an appointment another day. I really have something to do today." Han Su thought that Qin Sheng really had something to do, so he did not insist anymore. After all, Han Su was also a big shot in Tianjin City. If he went to the Binhainu area to inquire about the Han family's strength, everyone knew it. After Qin Sheng and Han Su parted, he sent a text message to Feng Huawei, telling him that he had finished his work and asking him if he had time. In less than 2 minutes, Feng Huawei called and told Qin Sheng that he had finished his work. He asked Qin Sheng to wait downstairs for a while and would come down soon. Just when Qin Sheng was waiting for Feng Huawei and looking at the Deputy Dean Su's information today, a man, who was also a student of the advanced course with Qin Sheng, walked slowly to Qin Sheng and said, "I know you." Qin Sheng looked up at the man in front of him in surprise. He had already recognized him as his classmate today. However, he could not remember his name. After all, he was a little distracted at that time. The man did not wait for Qin Sheng to speak and said, "You may not know me, but I know you. Hangzhou, CC, Yuerong Manor." Chapter 367. What a weirdo. Hangzhou, CC, Yuerong Manor. These 3 key words had already made Qin Sheng understand what the man in front of him wanted to express. This man knew him. Moreover, he had gotten to know him during the incident with Yin Chaozong and Chu Huanxi at Hangzhou Yuerong Manor. "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else." Although he was no longer afraid of Yin Chaozong and his gang, he still did not want others to know about what he had done in Beijing, especially Yin Chaozong and his gang. Qin Sheng's tone was cold. Once he sorted out his life and understood the detailed background of the Qin and Zhu families, he would settle the score with Yin Chaozong. The man was dressed very brightly. Inside, he was wearing a custom-made British-style suit from Savile Row, and on the outside, he was wearing a gray coat and a Hermes scarf. He looked like an elite member of the upper class. I don't think so, right? It's impossible for them to look the same. Even their names are the same, right? Besides, I heard about Qin Sheng some time ago. It seems that Qin Sheng has already disappeared from Hangzhou. Everything can't be so coincidental, right? The man said confidently. No matter how Qin Sheng refuted, he would not doubt his own judgment. In this case, Qin Sheng did not intend to deny it. He directly admitted, "You guessed right. I am that Qin Sheng. Is there any problem?" Qin Sheng suddenly admitted it so directly, which made the man unable to use the words that he had prepared. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Brother, you are not playing by the rules. Aren't you afraid that I will tip them off?" Qin Sheng said disapprovingly, "If you want to, I won't stop you. After all, this is your freedom. Anyway, I have to go back to Hangzhou to look for them sooner or later. What you owe will eventually be paid back." The man shook his head and said, "I'm just kidding. It doesn't benefit me at all. I don't have anything to do with them, and the path I take is different. But I am very curious. You should have left Hangzhou not long ago. How did you appear here? Not just anyone could enter this advanced course. Every student here had a family backing them, a powerful background, or a net worth of at least a few billion. How could you enter? If you were really qualified to enter, you wouldn't have been suppressed by Yin Chaozong and Chu Huanxi in Hangzhou. Moreover, as far as I know, there are only 30 places in this advanced course, but you're the 31st. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Do I need to explain this to you?" "Qin Sheng, you don't have to be hostile to me. I don't have any bad intentions towards you. After all, We don't have any conflicts of interest or old hatred. I'm just curious to meet someone I know here, and it's you who's full of mystery. No matter what, we're classmates now, right? The man didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he could understand that anyone would be wary of him. Qin Sheng squinted his eyes and looked at the man in front of him again and again. He was dubious about the man's words. If he really told Yin Chaozong this news, he would have to be prepared to face Yin Chaozong again. Maybe you didn't notice me in the classroom just now. In that case, let me introduce myself again. My name is Wei Li. I don't think you need me to tell you my background, Wei Li said with a smile. After all, the only person in Hangzhou with the surname Wei was his father, who was a powerful representative of the Zhujiang Chamber of Commerce. Qin Sheng was not interested in Wei Li. He was really not afraid of Wei Li revealing the news. At this time, Feng Huawei also came out. Qin Sheng said to Wei Li in a low voice, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first. See you later." Qin Sheng walked quickly to Feng Huawei. Feng Huawei was also looking at Wei Li. He just smiled and lowered his head slightly. Then he left with Qin Sheng. Wei Li stood there thoughtfully. This man was really a mystery. He was embarrassed in Hangzhou and could sneak into the advanced course of Tsinghua University. What was his background? Wei Li would never let go of people he was interested in. He was just curious. He really had no other thoughts about Qin Sheng. At noon, Qin Sheng and Feng Huawei did not go far. They had lunch in a cafeteria of Tsinghua University. Feng Huawei heard that it was Qin Sheng's first time in Tsinghua University, so he took Qin Sheng to wander around Tsinghua University. They did not go for lunch until half an hour later. A few simple ordinary dishes, 2 bowls of rice, and 2 bottles of Coke. Qin Sheng told Feng Huawei about his request for help. After hearing it, Feng Huawei agreed directly and did not refuse at all, because it was indeed a very easy thing for him. After all, it was worth it for Qin Sheng to owe him a favor for such a simple thing. After lunch, Feng Huawei insisted on paying the bill. Qin Sheng could not persuade him. In the end, he could only let Feng Huawei pay the bill. He would find a chance to make it up to him in the future. After they separated, Feng Huawei went back to his office in the School of Economics and Management. Qin Sheng had nothing to do, so he wandered around the campus and felt the atmosphere of Tsinghua University. These God's favored ones were the future backbones of the Republic. No one knew which one of them would shine brightly in the future. After wandering around the campus for a while, Qin Sheng went to a few famous places. He went to the library again. When he came out of the library, he did not expect to meet his neighbor, Han Su. Han Su was not reserved. What he said was true. This guy had probably just arrived at Tsinghua University in the past 2 days. He did not expect that he would be strolling around the campus with a pretty and pure beauty in his arms so soon. He was really attracting hatred. Other people's family affairs had nothing to do with Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng was planning to avoid this guy and find a shortcut. Who knew that he would be discovered by him and ran over. "Hey, Qin Sheng, what are you doing in such a hurry?" Han Su pulled the beauty and said happily. Qin Sheng was speechless. He could not hide anymore. Now he could only bite the bullet and said, "It's almost 2 o'clock. It's time for class. Get ready to go to the classroom." Oh, it's almost 2 o'clock. So fast. Han Su muttered to himself. Qin Sheng said casually, "Romance is the most important thing." Han Su smiled mischievously. Then he pulled the beauty next to him and introduced, "This is my girlfriend, Zhang Mi, a graduate student in law school." "Isn't she beautiful?" "Yes, she is." Qin Sheng was bored. He really wanted to tell the beautiful girl that she could not control this super rich second generation. It was better to be sensible. However, out of politeness and respect, Qin Sheng still greeted, "Hello." Han Su directly put his arm around Qin Sheng's shoulder as if he had known him for many years. He introduced, "This is my good friend and also my classmate, Qin Sheng. Isn't he very handsome? Mimi, are there any single beauties in your school? Introduce one to my buddy, and I guarantee that he will not worry about wealth in his life." After the beauty named Zhang Mi heard that Qin Sheng and Han Su were classmates, her eyes instantly lit up. She had heard from Han Su that the professors and guests of the advanced course of the School of Economics and Management were all well known. Moreover, this class only recruited 31 students, and all of them were actively invited. It could be seen that these students' backgrounds were not simple. Moreover, she and Han Su knew each other. They were both from Tianjin. She knew better than anyone else the status of Han Su's family in Tianjin. In this case, there was no need to guess Qin Sheng's background. Zhang Mi quickly promised, "Okay, there are many beauties in our law school." Qin Sheng did not give Han Su any face at all. He said, "I have a girlfriend, and she is very beautiful. I don't need to bother you. If there is nothing else, I will leave first." After saying that, Qin Sheng turned around and left. Han Su called him several times, but Qin Sheng did not respond. Han Su had no choice but to whisper a few words to Zhang Mi. Then he let Zhang Mi go back and quickly caught up with Qin Sheng. Han Su asked casually, "Bro, what's wrong? You seem to be in a bad mood." Qin Sheng squinted and said, "God is watching what people do. If you owe others, there will be people who will make you pay back. You are not from the same world at all. Since you can't give her happiness, why bother to disturb her life?" After Han Su heard that, he said disapprovingly, "Zhou Yu and Huang Gai, one is willing to fight, and the other is willing to suffer. We're just taking what we need. There is no need to feel that we owe each other. She knows that I have a girlfriend, and I also know her purpose. It is nothing more than to use me as a springboard to get the most benefits. In this day and age, who really cares about others?" Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly without saying anything. People with different principles could not make plans together. Everyone had their own principles and bottom lines. Qin Sheng was not an old pedant. Why did he have to preach the big principles to everyone? Qin Sheng said, "People live freely and freely. Everyone knows the big principles, but who can do it? I am a little bored studying in Tsinghua University. I'm not like you who really come here to learn things. I am here to suffer. So I find a temporary girlfriend to kill time. Anyway, what I give her will definitely exceed what she gives. I will definitely not owe her this little favor. You can rest assured that I'm not as bastard as you think." Seeing that Qin Sheng did not speak, Han Su continued to nag. He was thick-skinned. Others did not intend to pay attention to him, but he was like a dog-skin plaster. Qin Sheng shrugged and said, "As long as you are happy, let's not talk about this. Let's go to class. I called my father today and said that there are many beautiful women in our class. My father is even more bastard than me. He asked me to find one and marry her. You can't blame me for being like this. Our family's genes are like this. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked," Han Su said with a wronged look. Qin Sheng was really helpless this time. He was really a weirdo. In the afternoon class, Qin Sheng listened with great interest and made a lot of notes. After all, this professor who mainly taught economics was very famous among domestic economists. It was said that he was the government's think tank. Han Su next to him was also very happy playing games. They did not disturb each other. However, Wei Li observed Qin Sheng several times intentionally or unintentionally, but Qin Sheng did not care. After class, Qin Sheng packed up his things and left quickly. He still wanted to go to the bookstore to buy some things. As expected, he was stopped by Han Su after a few steps. He wanted to invite him to dinner and go to the bar. Qin Sheng did not have time to care about him, so he casually found an excuse to refuse. In the next few days, Qin Sheng's life was very calm. Feng Huawei gave him what he wanted the next day. So when Qin Sheng had classes, he went to classes. When he had no classes, he went to other departments to attend classes or stayed in the library. Chapter 368. Can't let it go. It's snowing in Xi'an, but I caught a cold. It's not a good thing. I love snow the most and hate colds the most. I'll go to Hangzhou tomorrow and start writing in seclusion the day after tomorrow. It's the first month of the new year. I hope you can work hard. After Qin Sheng got in the car, Qin Ran told him that she would take him back to the Sihiyuan for dinner. On this day, every month, Qin Ran would go back to the Sihiyuan to have dinner with Qin Chang'an, which was an unwritten rule. No matter how resentful she was, she still had to be filial to him. So now that Qin Sheng was back, Qin Ran would take him to follow this habit. She also hoped that the father and son could communicate more. Otherwise, the stalemate would never be broken. During this period of time, Qin Sheng's mentality gradually calmed down, and he could also understand some things. He began to consider things from Qin Chang'an's point of view. He was Qin Chang'an's biological son, and Qin Chang'an definitely had no evil intentions towards him. He had sent people to hide in the dark to protect him. If not for Qin Chang'an's protection, he might have died on Mount Jiahua. How could he be free and unfettered now? Moreover, Qin Chang'an was not in a hurry to reconcile with him. Of course, he had his reasons. Qin Sheng also thought about this, but he did not think it through. In the end, no one was perfect. Qin Chang'an was not a god, neither was Zhuang Zhou. It was impossible for them to control everything. Of course, they did not want Gu Qingyang to die. However, in the end, what had happened had still happened. Everything was not malicious, but a freak accident. They could only blame Yin Chaozong and his gang. Therefore, Qin Sheng was not so resentful towards Qin Chang'an. After all, he was a philosophy student. After he calmed down, he could think about it from all aspects and finally convince himself. Therefore, when Qin Ran told Qin Sheng that she would go back to the Sihiyuan for dinner, he was not surprised at all. He just said, "Oh," calmly. This surprised Qin Ran. She was afraid that Qin Sheng would refuse and was thinking about how to persuade him. She did not expect that Qin Sheng did not resist at all and directly agreed. Sometimes, she really did not understand her brother. Qin Ran did not inform the Sihiyuan. Qin Sheng also came back tonight. On the way, they met a fruit shop and bought some fruits and snacks, which was more or less a token of appreciation. When Qin Ran's car drove into the Sihiyuan and Gong Sun came out to pick her up, he saw that Qin Sheng was still in a daze. After a long time, he said excitedly, "Young master is also back. Come in, it's cold outside." Gong Sun said as he took the things from Qin Ran and Qin Sheng. He said to the bodyguard behind him, and said, "Young master is back." The bodyguard hurriedly ran to the middle court to inform Qin Chang'an. They had already known who the young man who had visited the Sihiyuan last time was 2 days ago. "I Qin. I'm not Qin Tescom. Qin. I am it. To say the family. Is. Shinde. She is too." Gong Sun led Qin Ran, Qin Sheng, and Qin Sheng to the middle courtyard. Every time this day came, Qin Chang'an would put off all his work and go back to the Sihiyuan in advance to prepare dinner by himself. Today was the same. He had already prepared dinner and was just waiting for Qin Ran to come back. Gong Sun took Qin Ran and Qin Sheng to the Sihiyuan. Qin Chang'an had a complicated expression. He was surprised, relieved, and emotional. Today was the same. He was waiting for Qin Ran. When the bodyguard came in and told him that Qin Ran had brought Qin Sheng back, the expression on Qin Chang'an's face was somewhat complicated. There was surprise, gratification, and emotion. In the end, he let out a long sigh. After all, father and son were father and son. There were no obstacles that could not be overcome. Qin Sheng could face Qin Chang'an, but he didn't know how to greet him. He was surprised, relieved, and emotional. Finally, he sighed. They were father and son. Qin Sheng could face Qin Chang'an directly, but he did not know how to greet him. Although he knew that the man in front of him was his father, he did not know why he could not call him father. Qin Sheng knew that Qin Sheng didn't accept him, but he was not in a hurry. He smiled and said, "You're back." This man, who was cold and ruthless in front of most people, was embarrassed at this moment. Others might find it strange. Qin Sheng tried his best to squeeze out a smile and nodded. Although he was forcing himself to smile, it was much better than pulling a long face as if someone owed him millions of dollars. Qin Ran tried to ease the atmosphere. "Dad, Uncle Gong Sun said you made garlic broccoli for me again. It didn't taste good last time." As she spoke, Qin Ran held Qin Chang'an's arm. Since Qin Sheng had come back, of course, Qin Ran would not treat her father the way she used to. It was understandable that she was angry before, but now she just hoped that this family could be like a family. Qin Sheng and her father were so close. If she was still stubborn, her father would be disappointed. "I guarantee that it will be delicious this time. They have all tasted it." Qin Chang'an chuckled. It was said that a daughter was a father's intimate little cotton-padded jacket. However, Qin Chang'an had never felt the warmth of this cotton-padded jacket. However, this did not affect his love for his daughter. Qin Ran smiled and said, "Okay, I'm going to taste it. Don't stand here. You must be hungry. Let's have dinner first." Gong Sun asked the kitchen to serve the dishes. Qin Chang'an took Qin Ran and Qin Sheng to the dining room and said to Gong Sun. When they arrived at the dining room, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng sat on both sides of Qin Chang'an, which made Qin Chang'an happy. Qin Ran said, "Dad, it's cold today. How about letting Qin Sheng drink with you to warm up?" Qin Chang'an didn't answer. He didn't care, but he was afraid that Qin Sheng wouldn't agree. Before they met, he knew Qin Sheng's character and temper. But after Qin Sheng came back, their relationship was no longer the same as before. He couldn't guess. "Qin Sheng, what do you think?" Qin Ran stared at Qin Sheng with a smile. There was a pleading look in her eyes. Since his sister was like this, how could Qin Sheng have the heart to refuse? Besides, he wouldn't do that. After all, he had figured out a lot of things these days. "You could drink a little. I have classes tomorrow morning," Qin Sheng said casually. It meant that he had agreed to Qin Ran. Qin Ran was very happy. She turned to Qin Chang'an and said, "Dad, which bottle should we open? I remember you still have a 50-year-old Mao Tai. Are you willing to drink it today?" It was the first time in Qin Chang'an's life that he drank with his son. It was a memorable event. Even if it was a 100-year-old Mao Tai, Qin Chang'an would be willing to drink it today, let alone a 50-year-old Mao Tai. "You can choose whatever you want from the liquor cabinet," Qin Chang'an said casually. After receiving the order, Qin Ran immediately stood up and walked to the suite in the dining room. There were two especially large wine cabinets in the suite, which were filled with all kinds of liquor of different ages. Most of them were collected by Qin Chang'an over the years. A small part of them were given or bought by others. In the dining room, after Qin Ran left, the atmosphere instantly dropped to the freezing point. Only the servants were serving dishes back and forth. Gong Sun, who was in the kitchen, had not come over yet. Qin Chang'an didn't want to be too embarrassed, so he looked at Qin Sheng and asked casually, "How are you doing in Tsinghua these days?" Qin Sheng just raised his head slightly and replied casually, "Not bad. It's quite fulfilling and I learned a lot. After all, Tsinghua is the top university in the country. Theory should be combined with practice. What you lack is practical experience, unlike your classmates," Qin Chang'an said in a low voice. This class was highly qualified, but there was no specific educational background. It was meaningless for Qin Sheng, so Qin Chang'an didn't arrange it like that. Qin Sheng knew what Qin Chang'an wanted to say, so he said casually, "I prefer to listen to history and philosophy, but it seems that Peking University is better." Qin Sheng blocked the topic that Qin Chang'an wanted to continue. Qin Chang'an didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His son was not so easy to fool. How to let him enter the company? This was indeed a difficult problem. At this time, Gong Sun came in and asked confusedly, "Where's Ran Ran?" "She went to get the liquor." "Qin Sheng, drink with me," Qin Chang'an said calmly. Hearing this, Gong Sun smiled happily. The father and son could drink, which meant that there was progress in their relationship. Gong Sun said happily, "I'll go get the liquor." Qin Ran took a bottle of Mao Tai, which seemed to be a National Day reception liquor. Anyway, there were all kinds of liquor in the liquor cabinet. At this time, Gong Sun also took out the liquor glass. "Uncle Gong Sun, you drink too," Qin Ran said with a smile. Gong Sun shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I won't drink. I've quit for many years." Gong Sun could hold his liquor very well. It could be said that 2 or 3 Qin Sheng could not beat him. But after the incident that year, Gong Sun decided to quit drinking. It had been more than 20 years since then, and he had not touched a single drop of alcohol. For a person who loved alcohol as much as his life, not everyone had this kind of determination. Qin Ran only drank red wine and never touched white wine. When she was socializing, no one would force her to drink. After all, no one would make things difficult for a beauty. Moreover, Qin Chang'an was behind Qin Ran. Who dared to offend him? Qin Ran poured liquor for her father and brother. Recently, She liked to be a waitress. Seeing that Qin Sheng had reintegrated into this big family, she was happier than anyone else. Qin Chang'an picked up the liquor glass and hesitated for a while. Originally, I wanted to call you later, but since you are back today, I will say it in person. Qin Ran frowned and said, Dad, what's the matter? Qin Chang'an said with some self-mockery, nothing big. The day after tomorrow is your mother's birthday. In the past, I was the one who went to see her. This year, Qin Sheng is back. Coincidentally, he has not gone to see his mother yet. Then you and your brother can go together the day after tomorrow. Qin Ran suddenly thought of it. She could not help but feel a little regretful. How could she forget such an important day? Maybe she was too happy that Qin Sheng had come back recently, so she forgot about it. Consequently, Qin Ran said, Dad, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. However, except for the day of her mother's death, Qin Ran would not go there at other times. Every time she thought of her mother, she would go to the old house. She felt that she was closer to her mother there. I will ask Gong's son to prepare the things. At that time, you can go there directly, Qin Chang'an said in a low voice. Qin Ran frowned and said, Dad, aren't you going? I won't go this time. We are an old couple. If I don't go this time, your mother won't blame me, Qin Chang'an said with a smile. However, when he said this, a trace of sadness flashed across his eyes. That kind of sadness had a different meaning for a man who was only 60 years old. Qin Chang'an smiled happily. It was said that time could make people forget everything. No matter how hardworking people and things were, they would become dispensable. However, after more than 20 years, why did Qin Chang'an still not let go? Chapter 369. It's too hard to be alone some love, perhaps because it was too perfect, God would be so cruel to break them apart. If the accident had not happened more than 20 years ago, the love between Qin Sheng's parents would have been envied by many. When they first met, they were only 16 years old. A heavy snow had just passed, and the snow in the yard was up to their ankles. Several boys were making a snowman there, and a girl in a cotton-padded jacket with a red face stood not far away and watched them quietly, humming a song that no one had heard before. Qin Chang'an was led into the yard by his father and was instantly attracted by the girl. Later, when he recalled that day, he finally knew what it meant to be 10,000 years at a glance, and what it meant to continue the love of the previous life in this life. His father entered the house, but Qin Chang'an stood outside and did not move. He kept staring at the girl, because the girl was so beautiful, especially her clear eyes, which were full of vitality. The girl finally came to her senses and lowered her head in embarrassment. Qin Chang'an walked over slowly and said directly, My name is Qin Chang'an. What's yours? Zhu Qinghuan, the girl said with a smile, as if she was not afraid of the strange boy in front of her. The 16-year-old Qin Chang'an muttered subconsciously, Qinghuan is the most interesting thing in the world. Do you like Su Shi, too? The girl said in surprise. Her name was taken from Su Shi's poem, Huan Shi Sha, fine rain and slanting wind in the morning frost. However, not everyone knew this poem in that era where there were many illiterates. Qin Chang'an shook his head and said, I've read some, but I likely buy more. 10 steps to kill a person, 1,000 miles unstoppable. Oh, the girl did not argue with the boy about the literary talent of Su Shi and Li Bai. She just lowered her head and pouted, playing with her red scarf. Qin Chang'an felt very strange about the girl in front of him. He was excited and nervous, and even he did not know why. He almost blurted out subconsciously, Zhu Qinghuan, wait a few years, I will marry you. Hearing this, the girl was stunned. Then she looked up and stared at the boy in front of her, who she had just known for a few minutes, in surprise. He was not fat, thin, or handsome, but he was tall and looked a little mature. The girl did not know why he said such a thing, but it was always a happy thing to be liked, so she covered her mouth and laughed. At that moment, Qin Chang'an felt that this winter was not as cold as he had imagined. It was as if spring had arrived in an instant. The flowers were blooming and the sun was shining brightly. In the following years, Qin Chang'an never saw the girl again. He had been living a homeless life. Sometimes he was in Siju City, and sometimes he was in other places. After all, it was a turbulent era. Many big shots could not control their own fates, let alone young children like them. In the face of the times, no one was spared. It was not until he was 24 years old that he finally returned to Siju City and no longer had to wander around. At a random gathering, he saw the girl again. He immediately recognized the girl whom he had been thinking about for the past few years. He walked up to the girl again and asked directly, "Zhu Qinghuan, do you still remember me?" Although 8 years had passed between the ages of 16 and 24, his appearance would not change much. Therefore, Zhu Qinghuan still remembered Qin Chang'an. After all, not many boys had told her directly that they wanted to marry her, and not many boys had accurately told her the origin of her name. Qin Chang'an, Zhu Qinghuan, who was wearing a red dress, said with a smile. She was surrounded by many friends who were looking at the ordinary-looking Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an said again in a shocking tone, "I'm back to marry you." His words were like thunder on the flat ground. The surrounding crowd was in an uproar. It should be known that Zhu Qinghuan was very popular at this time. She was the dream lover of many men. There were also many boys who chased after her, including some with excellent family backgrounds. Zhu Qinghuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. 8 years had passed, and this man was still the same as before. He had not changed at all. "Then you should at least get me first." Zhu Qinghuan did not refuse. She also had a deep impression of Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an nodded firmly and said, "Okay, there are many people chasing after me. Are you confident?" Zhu Qinghuan joked with a smile. Qin Chang'an did not answer. He turned around and left. He did not dare to say that he was confident, but he would try his best. Even if he could not get Zhu Qinghuan in the end, he would not leave himself with regrets. That year, Qin Chang'an tried his best to do what a man could do for a woman. The ending was self-evident. Zhu Qinghuan agreed to marry Qin Chang'an, but Qin Chang'an also paid a lot for it. He had offended many rivals in love, which was also a hidden danger in the future. They got to know each other and fell in love with each other. They got married and had children. Their married life was very happy. Qin Chang'an worked hard for his career, while Zhu Qinghuan took care of her husband and children. They helped each other in difficult times. Their relationship was like glue, which made everyone envious. However, that year, everything came to an abrupt end. His wife's sudden death was a devastating blow to Qin Chang'an. At that time, he did not care about his father taking Qin Sheng away, because he had completely given up on himself and could not recover from the great sorrow. At that time, he even wanted to die because he had promised to spend the rest of his life with her. Now that he was alone, he did not know how to continue living. However, thinking of his daughter, he did not commit suicide in the end because he was afraid that his wife would blame him. No one knew how Qin Chang'an survived those years. No one knew how he vented his sorrow bit by bit. However, when everyone came back to their senses, Qin Chang'an had completely changed and moved forward with a heavy burden. All these years, whether it was his wife's death anniversary, birthday, or wedding anniversary, as long as it was an important festival, Qin Chang'an would visit his wife. He would definitely bring a bouquet of flowers, because he knew that his wife liked flowers. When he was alone, he would chat with her, talk about his troubles, or talk about his daughter, and so on. Sometimes he would drink half a bottle of white wine alone, as if that was the most satisfying way. This year, Qin Sheng came back. Qin Chang'an thought that compared to him, his wife would want to see their son more. He knew that his wife would definitely want to see him now that his son was back. However, Qin Sheng was not in a good state, so Qin Chang'an did not urge him. It was just that the day after tomorrow was his wife's birthday, so he talked about it today. When Qin Chang'an said this, Qin Ran felt very sad. She knew that her father would visit her mother almost every month. She thought that after so many years, that affection had long faded. It was not until today that she understood that her father's affection for her mother was too deep. It was so deep that it could not be erased, even a little bit of memory. "Dad, I'm sorry," Qin Ran said emotionally. Qin Chang'an said with a smile. How can a daughter say sorry to her father? Dad will not blame you no matter what you do, as long as you are happy. Qin Sheng also felt bad. He hesitated for a moment, then raised his glass and said, Let me drink with you. Qin Chang'an was already satisfied with Qin Sheng's words. He picked up the wine glass and drank it in one gulp. This was the most comfortable wine he had ever drunk in all these years. He almost felt drunk. Qin Chang'an's eyes lit up. A family, a table of dishes, a bottle of wine. Although the atmosphere was not that harmonious, Qin Chang'an was still very happy because all the efforts he had made over these years did not matter at this moment. For him, his life dreams and goals had been realized long ago. He stood at the top of his level. Now he only wanted his children to be happy and enjoy his old age. After dinner, Qin Chang'an went to the study. Qin Ran and Qin Sheng sat in the side hall and watched TV. The table was full of fruits and snacks. Qin Ran said absent-mindedly, He has had a hard time these years. Didn't he find another one? Qin Sheng asked, squinting. Qin Ran shook her head and said, No, I know he has other women, but no one has ever walked into this house. As for his women, I can understand. After all, it's too hard to be alone. But his heart can only hold our mother. No one else can live in it. Hearing these words, Qin Sheng felt anxious and said casually, Sister, let's go for a drink. Qin Ran stared at Qin Sheng in surprise. It seemed that she could understand why Qin Sheng said this. She said in a low voice, Okay, let me make a call first. After a while, Qin Ran finished the call and said to Qin Sheng, Let's go. I'll take you to a place. Qin Sheng did not care about where they were going. As long as he had alcohol to drink, it would be fine. He had not had a good drink for a long time. Qin Ran took Qin Sheng out. Before she left, she told Uncle Gongsun that she would take Qin Sheng out to play and would not come back tonight. Of course, Gongsun did not stop her. For Qin Ran, since Qin Sheng had come back, as her brother, she would, of course, bring Qin Sheng into her circle slowly. This was definitely a good thing for Qin Sheng. In the future, even if something happened, she could take care of Qin Sheng. However, Qin Ran did not tell them who she would bring today. This was a small bar located near the World Trade Center. It never received outsiders. Basically, friends brought their friends here. The owner did not rely on this to make money. It was a place for friends to chat and make fun of each other. This bar was hidden in a private room of a Western restaurant. There was a decorative bookcase in the private room. After opening the decorative bookcase, they would enter a dark path. After passing through the path, they would arrive at the bar. The inside of the bar would suddenly become bright and spacious. Qin Ran often came here. Therefore, she led Qin Sheng into the private room with ease. There was a special waiter in the private room. There was also a face recognition system. Naturally, the system could distinguish whether they were acquaintances or not. At this moment, Qin Ran's group of friends were already inside. They were waiting to see who this new friend of hers was. Moreover, it was a man. How could they not look forward to it? When Qin Ran led Qin Sheng into the bar, they instantly attracted the attention of many acquaintances. Most of them knew Qin Ran, but were not familiar with her. However, everyone knew that Qin Ran came here alone every time. She had never brought any friends with her. At most, she would be with her few best friends. Why did she bring a man here today? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.